Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Happy Friday. We are coming at you live and it is July 10th, 2026. We're doing live astrology readings on the channel about the up and coming new moon in Cancer. So welcome. I hope you guys are having an awesome kind of kickoff to your weekend. This is going to be my weekly kind of overview for any of the questions that you guys have live, be that about aspects in your natal chart, transits that are currently going on, synastry, we do it all. So do me a favor, if you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up and like this video, and make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell button below so you get more alerts for my videos. Other than my Friday lives, I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays as well. We got so much content on the channel, obviously all the major transits, horoscopes, new and full moon reports, and our monthly kind of overview, obviously, in the horoscopes, and also we do the Sunday astro weather. So if you guys like this, you want to see more, do subscribe and consider joining my memberships, where if you get in on level 4, you're gonna get a reading with me once a month and you get to skip the line. All right, so just a couple heads up. If you guys are watching this on Saturday or Sunday, I'm no longer live. We only do this on Fridays. So if you guys send donations for reading, we're gonna send them back your way, and hopefully you guys join us next week or the following week for the next astrology readings. Also, I recommend, if you guys want to get a reading, scan the QR code and get in the queue. We're going to leave the queue open for maybe the next 5 or so minutes, because we've got a full house tonight between the people who paid for readings and also our members. So thank you guys. You guys can always find the preview link for these live readings in my community tab. We usually post it sometimes Thursday night, Friday morning. So it pays to kind of get in ahead of time and know that you can get your reading. But if this is your first time, scan the QR code. It's going to take you to my PayPal. I need to have some important information to be able to conduct the reading, like your name, your date of birth, the time, and the city, and then any one question that you have about your chart. We are doing readings for $55. It's going to be donation based, or if you want a synastry reading that's relationship based, it's $75. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to say hi to everybody. I know we got a lot of people who have been waiting, so thank you guys. I appreciate it. Friday nights are always fun. I like being able to connect with y'all. And I've got quite a list of people here. So I'm just going to read off who's already in the queue. And then when you guys hear your name, you're going to hear me calling out your name. It's just letting you know that you're next up for a reading. These live sessions can be kind of long. So if you guys can't always hang out and wait for your reading, you can come back to this video. You can watch the reading and leave me feedback in the comments if you guys want to see how those readings play out. I'm trying to think, I'm drawing a blank. Okay, so with that being said, we have got for level 4, Junie, Steph, Diana, and Amanda V. So you guys are going to be first. And then for the queue, we've got Erica, Elaine, Lula, Brianna, Alyssa, Silk, and Jennifer. So get into the queue if you guys want to get in before we call last call. And if you are a level 4 member who did not get your reading last week, you can cash in, or you guys can come back next week for tarot, or in 2 weeks when we do the full moon in Aquarius readings. The next month also we're gonna have eclipses and stuff. So make sure you guys are subscribed. If you guys are level 4 members too, I'm working on a webinar that's going to be a paid webinar, but I am gonna be giving it to my level 4 members for free. So you guys are gonna get some exclusive content in the next month or so, probably actually before the end of July. So joining memberships is definitely gonna pay off in the next month. All right, so let's get into who we're going to be starting with first. We have got Junie, and then Steph and Diana. You guys are going to be next. Yes, the level 4 readings, you get a reading. Level 4 memberships, you're going to get a reading once a month, and you can choose if it's going to be tarot or astrology. All right, so we're going to start with Junie. Let me head over to the comments here. And Junie says, hey, I want to cash in on my monthly reading. Junie, did you have a particular question, or do you want to know about what's going on with the new moon in Cancer? Did you have anything in particular? And then while I'm waiting for you, I will take Steph unless she pops in here. So we're going to close reading soon, guys. If you want to get in, I recommend doing it now. This chat keeps disappearing on me. What the heck? Junie, are you there? All right, I'll give her a second to see if she circles around. So I'll take Stephanie. And Stephanie, I wasn't sure where your solar return was. Oh, there you go. You must be psychic. Omaha, Nebraska. All right, so let's take a look. Jax, are you level 4? Because if you are, you just need to send the information in the chat and we can get you on there. And I'll double check and make sure you're a member if you're not sure. Okay, so level 4 are the people who get the readings, but if you want to go up a level, we can do a reading for you tonight if you'd like. Hey Candace, one quick question. I started doing astrology readings 2 days ago for the first time. I have Uranus exactly square my sun in Pisces. If you want to get a reading, I'm happy to answer your guys' questions. You just have to make a donation because we got a ton of people we got to kind of move through. But listen to your horoscopes for your ascendant sign. If you're, let's see, conjunct the descendant. So that's very much taking astrology readings. So that's kind of cool, especially in Sagittarius. All right, so let's do... Jax, what's your name on PayPal? Because I don't see anybody in, but let me check. Let me just double check. And then we'll take, if we don't hear from Junie, we're going to take Stephanie. Let me see. Maybe it hasn't updated yet, so let me just double check really quick. Appreciate your patience, guys. There's a lot of stuff going on. Mercury retrograde. I'm like, ugh. I see you in there, Jacqueline. Is it Jacqueline? Is that correct? I'll add you onto my list. So you'll be the last person. All right, so let's do Stephanie. I'm waiting to hear from Junie. If I don't hear from her, I'm going to talk about what's going on in her chart with the new moon. Jax? Okay, cool. Thanks for getting the reading, Jax. And then this is going to be for Stephanie for Omaha, Nebraska. All right. So we're looking at her solar return, which she had on July the 3rd. And let's see what Stephanie says. All right, member under another username, cashing in. Tell me about my solar return. Thank you. Feels like my purpose this year is close to what's happening in my natal chart, kind of. Okay. Kind of, yeah. It's off by a couple degrees, but you're going to see that it's very similar to where the transits are in terms of your natal chart, because I think you're, what, 29 degrees Libra rising, so it's going to be basically going through the same houses. With that being said, it's a very different rising sign, so it's going to be interpreted very differently. But just to pull up, we'll put your natal here on the outside so you can kind of see the difference. Okay, so going from typically a Libra rising to a Scorpio rising is very different, because that's like a Venus ruled chart, and now you're moving to like a Mars Pluto ruled chart. So first thing that I always touch on when I look at the solar return is that this is something that's going to play out essentially over the better part of the next year. Sometimes some of the aspects that I will mention when I'm doing just like a review of the solar return will happen exactly when I'm predicting it. Sometimes it takes a whole year to kind of fully happen. Number one is that your ascendant is at a 7. So it's going to represent relationships, partnerships, clients, anything kind of connected to others. And obviously this is ruled by Mars and Pluto. So you've got Pluto that's here retrograde in the 3rd house of Aquarius. You've got Mars that's here in the 7th house of obviously Gemini, and they're trining each other. So that's pretty sweet. I mean, I like that aspect. That means that this is really enhancing through the Pluto retrograde a transformation of the way that you think, potentially even short distance travel opportunities, reevaluating something connecting to home, where home is, relationships with parents. And obviously the trine to Mars in the 7th is saying that may be brought on by, well, taking action in relationships, having a client-based business, anything connected to also 3s. So you could see that people come in pairs this year where you meet one person and then you meet another. It can also be talking about, because it's on the cusp of your 8th house, that something about your home may transform as a result of a transformation of your resources, maybe investments, things connected to other people's money. I can only just tell you, maybe listening over like the next month or so, I would say listen to the July horoscopes for Scorpio. It's going to talk a lot about how other people's resources are helping kind of make some big necessary moves or changes within your home or your family. And the fact that you've got like heavy hitters like Pluto, Mars, and Uranus trining Tells me that this is going to be quite active, especially when you see stuff that's going to be going through Libra, because it'll create a trine, Aquarius, which will be January, February of next year, and then May into June. The other thing that we look at is where the sun is. Obviously, your solar return, it's always going to be in the same place, 11 degrees of Cancer, and it's in the 9th house. So that means that a lot of the action is going to be kind of connected to 9th house matters. Foreign travel, international relationships sometimes, long distance relationships, education, learning, teachers, mentors. So the fact that you have the sun in a trine to the ascendant is nice. This does mean that a lot of your career goals, I think, are going to flow very nicely with a change and transformation, Mercury retrograde, of your beliefs about where home is, or potentially where you're supposed to be moving or relocating to, or what your beliefs about family are. And you're also going to see the moon, which is in the 4th house, so it's very comfortable there, is very, very close to the North Node. And the North Node in the 4th house is talking about really focusing on roots, things that are connected to home. The moon is like the quickest moving luminary in astrology, so this is going to represent maybe learning about your family lineage, changing your home. Maybe this is going to be about family relationships at a distance, because the moon is connected to your 9th house. And the aspects that the moon are making, it's starting to come into a square with Mars and Uranus, but it's not close enough to kind of pick that up. It is sextiling Saturn, so this could be good for some positive changes that's going on with work, health, and habits, and potentially even like maybe being able to consider like a home-based business or something that you can do closer to home, or something that you're kind of doing on your free time, or building something of your own, maybe another theme. You've got Jupiter that is opposing Pluto. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of my Scorpio risings right now, is just kind of being like, man, there are some big things on the horizon in terms of changes with your career and your reputation, trying to make more money. But the opposition to Pluto retrograde means that a lot of the expansion that's going to be coming most likely with your career, your resources, may be somehow kind of tied to where you're living. So you'll notice throughout the year, there's going to be this big change in the career, you know, kind of reflecting on how it's impacting you emotionally and potentially even your home. I see a lot of people move when they have like the North Node in the 4th house and a solar return, moon in the 4th house. Sometimes if there's aspects between the 4th house lord, which is Uranus, and the chart ruler. So you've got all of those things kind of going on. And she says, I have 6th degree Jupiter in Libra. I'm thinking of going back to school, possibly. My boss may retire and she wants me to prep to take her position. So that's very much the retrograde that you're going to see that's going to be going through here starting in January. So I like the Mercury retrograde in the 6th, which is like, well, I could go back to school. You know, that is a way to potentially increase, you know, anything connected to your career. But a lot of it's going to be like, well, where is the money, right? Mercury is retrograde. How do I fund that? And she says, I do day trade and I feel like I'm seeing a breakthrough since my birthday. I do want to move to Tampa. So see, all of these things, they've probably been kind of brewing for the better part of like the last 6 to 8 weeks, because it starts to set up as you're coming into your birthday season. I would probably say the reevaluation of anything connecting to investing in education is a good move. If you're going to potentially make a bigger move, I really don't think it's going to be something that's going to be happening until closer to maybe February or March of next year. Because you're going to see, let me put the transits on the outside, that there is going to be an eclipse. Well, first of all, you got one here, that's on your Venus. So that could represent a woman saying to you, hey, I want to prepare you to take over my position. And then you could see that that could be prepping you to do that, or making more money starting in October. And then you're going to see Mars retrograde here. That may represent, you know, actually instigating the change at work in February, March, and April. And you'll see an eclipse that's going to be happening here in February of 2027. That's very close to your IC. So that seems to suggest that if there was going to be a change going on with your home or your living situation, it's probably going to start happening around this time. And that you would need to give yourself about 6 months to kind of see that, you know, kind of fully come together. I think career looks strong. Saturn's going to be trining your midheaven. You're going to see that Jupiter is picking up the energy of the 10th house, as is Venus. And a woman leaving is very much the South Node Venus energy. Venus is also trining Saturn. So that means that if you're putting in the hard work and the dedication, you're going to see that there is going to be some kind of karmic gift or reward. But part of what I'm looking at is like Mercury's retrograde and Venus is on the south node. So it almost to me looks like, well, do I go the path of, you know, going and taking over her position and getting kind of mentored, because the ninth house can be mentors, or am I just deciding not to do that because the plan is to move and you're going to start thinking about either going back to school or planning your move, and you have time. But education, long distance travel, anything connected with mentors, that's really going to be the emphasis that you're going to see this year. And laying your natal chart on top of this, I like to see if there's anything that kind of lines up. So Mars and Venus in conjunction, great opportunity for relationships. Saturn conjunct the North Node, deciding whether or not you're going to break away from feeling like you're bound to live in a specific place and also continue living with family if you do. The Moon is squaring transit Saturn, so that could represent also thinking more about a move. And then you're going to see Mars is conjunct your South Node, and that means that you're not really going to know whether or not you're fully going to make the decision to kind of segue into taking this role, you know, kind of taking over a position for somebody at work, probably until about the beginning of 2027. You'll start to see that in the Mars retrograde, January through about April. North Node moves into your second, so that's cool. That's going to help you really grow your resources, and it's connected to Jupiter, which is in your ninth house of your solar return. It's in Libra, which is going to fall into, obviously, you know, your natal 11th house. Good for networking, good for making new friends, connecting with new people. And if you flip this around, here's the transits on the outside, so it's not going to be all that different. She says, it's a lot. She's the division accountant, so I'm not sure. I mean, you know, talking with her during the Mercury retrograde, especially because it's in your ninth house, and debating whether or not that's something you can take on, or if you're going to need some education or some mentorship, I think is a good move. And Venus conjunct Chiron means that a woman is going to come in and she's going to help you kind of heal any issues that you may have with leadership when it comes to your career. And then it looks like now you're starting an annual perfection year 33. So this is your Jesus year. And if you follow your whole sign chart, which most of the time I'm sure you don't because you're so late in Libra, but go back and think about the year that you turned 21. That was the last time you had an annual perfection, year 10. Strong if you have the sun in the 10th house, because it puts you in a higher position of like visibility and like obviously kind of, you know, getting superior roles or managing or kind of bossing, you know, bossing up in some way. And that means that the moon, so like the lunar eclipses, so you'll see one at the end of the end of August of this year. And then you'll see another one that's going to come in Virgo that's going to be taking place kind of early 2027. Basically, you're ruled by the moon. So what you're going to find, she says, I got pregnant that year. Well, it's about growing up, right? And parenting, because you've got the sun in the 10th house and you've got the ruler, the moon, debilitated in your 4th. So it represents the expansion and contraction. And I think with the moon being heavily aspected in your chart, it squares your Jupiter, it opposes your sun. And now that Saturn's coming into the mix, it's creating a grand cardinal cross. So it's basically saying this year, you're weighing your options and you're going, okay, well, you know, do I want to focus on career or do I want to move? Do I want to focus on education and growth, Jupiter, or, you know, do I want to focus on relationships because Saturn and Neptune are kind of going through here. So it's nice to have Saturn actually in Aries, even though it's not a fun transit in your 7th house, because it means that there will be people who will come in, be that relationships, you know, therapists, it could even be business partnerships, that are really pushing for you to evolve when it comes to your career goals. And likely you'll find it's people who are going to be like kind of coaching you or mentoring you or kind of pushing you, you know. So basically you're going to want to watch when planets are going through your 10th house. So I think you're going to have a lot better clarity when it comes to what direction you're going with work by the end of the Mercury retrograde. So kind of getting into August. And then you're also going to be watching when there's planets that are going to be conjunct your moon and pretty much every full moon thereafter. So just to kind of run through that quickly, watch when Mars goes into your 10th house, because that's going to represent where you're being expected to kind of perform more or do more. And that's going to be like, you know, August into what appears to be September. So work will be quite busy. The square to Saturn can be, you know, putting a little bit of like the pressure cooker on relationships or having to feel like you're prioritizing work over relationships. And then you're going to want to watch when we have the lunar eclipse right here in your 6th house. So that could represent a change going on with your schedule, and that's going to square Uranus. So it says for you to kind of evolve with work or responsibility, you might feel like you need education or you need some kind of training. And then you're also going to want to watch when you have a full moon in Cancer. So that'll happen here. And that's going to square Neptune. So I would look for some of the bigger decisions about what roles you're going to be taking on coming right at the end of the year. And then you just want to hang tight until you get to the next lunar eclipse, which will be in 2027. And that's going to be right here, Moon conjunct Mars. That tells me that you might have a sudden job change, or you might be letting go of one old, relationship or one old career relationship to segue into something new and going after your goals. And then you'll want to watch when planets eventually come into your 10th house. So that'll be right around your birthday next year. And you're going to have yet another Mercury retrograde in Cancer actually in June of 2027. So with that retrograde, it means that you might be, now that you have either completed some kind of training, segueing into something new, or now that you have potentially moved, now you're settling into like a new job or like a new location. So every lunar eclipse, every full moon, these are things that you really want to pay attention to. And the truth is somehow the 7th house Saturn transit is really activating with the moon and also the sun. Where do you want to go? Do you want to stay in the path that you've been on and take on this role? Or do you want to focus on relationships, building a client-based business, and potentially even working with some kind of mentor or somebody who's going to be coaching you to, get the show on the road and do something that you're going to love, I think, a little bit more. So once you see like a significant transit to your moon, that's when your career is really going to take off. Saturn squaring it, you're not going to see it this year, but you'll start to notice where people are nudging you. And 10th house years always correlate with some significant, change in regards to your status. Last time it was you being a mom, right? Moon in the 4th house. But this time it might be, well, do I want to focus on my career? Do I want to build my own thing? Or do I want to move? Yeah, the pressure is there. And even if it wasn't the 10th house year, I would say a lot of the same things to you, just with like Saturn coming into a square with your sun, and also with like, Saturn squaring your moon. I think I've told you before, I have similar planets in Capricorn. Actually, my Saturn's at 10 degrees Capricorn and my Jupiter's at, 10 degrees of Cancer. So I've been going through the Saturn square too. And it makes me realize that it's about kind of building new ways of relating with people. And the people who are going to push you the most and kind of encourage you the most are doing that because the square is coming into your, your 10th house sun. So you might actually have quite a significant breakthrough. And I know that if this were my chart, I would be like, I want like a career coach, or I want a mentor, or I want somebody who's going to be kind of prepping and priming me or helping kind of direct me so you can have some of the success that this chart says that you're going to have. But watch with Mars and Uranus here. That tells me that there is going to be some people who are just going to be kind of forceful, or it means that there could be people who just suddenly come into your life in a relationship sense that dramatically change the way that you look at the foundation of your life. So it's very relationship oriented too. And that somehow is connected to potentially a move. So you might find that you move and then there's some kind of like romantic connection with somebody, but likely with Venus conjunct the South Node, it would come after you make a pretty significant like career pivot. So right after that, you'll decide, and then you'll notice there's some relationship energy that's going to start coming in, which Saturn's going to get a little bit closer to your 7th house cusp next year. So hopefully that's helpful in giving you that feedback. She says, it's been harsh, but I'm getting everything with my health together. Good job. Yeah. Well, timing wise, with Saturn squaring your moon, it's not something you want to do this year anyway. So anytime from about mid-April on next year is going to be a little bit better if you want to make any aesthetic changes. But definitely let me know what happens. I'm very curious to see with Mercury here, if you move, or even if you're trying to connect with somebody before you move, a relationship might actually kind of start up. It's very common when you see Saturn squaring your moon that you're not totally thrilled about what's going on with your home or your living situation. And the lack of either relationship or some kind of like family support is enough to kind of seal the deal to make you consider going elsewhere. So hopefully that's helpful in giving you a little bit of insight to this year. Definitely let me know how those eclipses play out, and keep an eye on each full moon every month, because it's going to bring something to a major kind of conclusion. But you're a full moon baby, so I think maybe every month kind of feels like that for you. There's a cute agent at work, we will see. I love that. Mars is going to be your partnerships. So with Mars retrograding over Mars, there could potentially be some kind of inner office connection that you're going to have. So look for that towards the beginning of the year. All right. Let's see. So Jax and Stephanie, I have you guys added to my list. Readings are now closed for everybody else. We're going to get on with with Junie, and then we're going to take Diana and Amanda. So did Junie pop back in? I didn't see her. You're welcome. Superfit, yeah, if you want to send it right now, then you'll be the last one. All right, I didn't see anything else from Junie, so if you've been watching this far and you're like, where is my reading? Here it is. So I'm going to talk about what I think is the most important. We'll touch on what's going on with this up-and-coming new moon. I will say, Miss Junie, you got Venus transiting your ascendant right now, so I think you're probably one of the few signs, unless people have like a natal Venus in Virgo, that's enjoying this transit. So Venus crossing here means that it's bringing you opportunity for better harmony, beauty, relationships, connections, you know, with other people. So I think right off the bat, having Venus moving through your first house for the better part of like the next 3 weeks is quite positive, especially because you're a Taurus sun. And so you're going to see that Venus is going to be trining Mars, which is good for relationships. It's going to trine your sun, which is also, I think, good for having more of like a spiritual kind of ability to tap in, an ability to rest, recuperate, even travel. And then you're going to see as Venus is continuing, she's going to start coming into a bump with Uranus here in this next week. So there could be a little bit of friction between how you want to look, how you want to dress, you know, what you find beautiful or pleasurable, and, you know, work and responsibility. So that'll kind of pop in right around the 13th. And then what you're going to want to watch is when the Mercury retrograde concludes, because you're a Mercury ruled chart. Obviously with the retrograde in your 11th house, it's been a lot of, you know, who are my friends, who are my allies, what are my goals? There could be reconnections with people. There could be also like a social media detox with the retrograde, or a reevaluation or reassessment of what your long-term goals are. And I would pay attention, because having all of these like aspects with the building up into the new moon, like Sunday, you're going to see there's going to be a Mercury Cazimi. So hold on a second. Let's go to that. So Saturday, Sunday. So you'll have a Mercury Cazimi where there's probably going to be a realization either about your friendships or your goals in the dark moon. So it's helping you clear out old outdated goals in preparation for the new moon to then come in. And that's going to be very early on the 14th. And it'll be at 21 degrees. So this could be with friends at a distance, or kind of magnifying some of your goals, some of your long-term kind of directional plans. Really nice with the sextile to your Mercury. So it could be good for travel and also connecting with friends. Also nice because this is going to be making some aspects to your moon and your Jupiter. So this is almost going to feel like a full moon in a way, because you've got sun in opposition to moon. And it's also going to be making some slight squares to your north and south node. So it can be, what are my goals in regards to finances, resources, security, sustaining oneself, and also the money or the kind of karmic entanglements that you have with other people. You just completed your Saturn return, but Saturn's still dancing on your south node. So it could represent you have to feel like you're letting go of people who aren't bringing you security, or you can't get close to them, or like there is a sense of maybe feeling like some people have to get shaken out, or you're sharing some kind of personal, you know, issues you're going through with your friends, and it's allowing you to kind of connect, or you're filling them in on what's been changing in your life recently. And I would say that new moon, is it making any other aspects? Opposes Neptune. So it's kind of really highlighting your platonic friendships, right? The connections that you have with people that are more going to be friendly, less romantic. So it can mean that there is a longing for a relationship. But I think a lot of my Virgo risings, especially early Virgo risings, are going to see there's going to be a lot more relational energy that's coming up here, right around August 27th, 2026. So the end of next month, when you have the last Pisces eclipse kind of tied to the North Node in your 7th, And this is going to put the ruler in your 11th, excuse me, your 12th. So that could mean that you're kind of doing soulmate work, or there's some spiritual lessons around relationships, or there's some things that are being revealed to you, or your intuition is like really strong when it comes to partners. And that's going to square your Pluto, square Uranus, and it's going to oppose the Sun and Mercury. So it means that you're going to be like, how can I better understand and relate to people? And yeah, it'll create a grand mutable cross in your chart, but think about what's happened under the previous Pisces eclipses and where there's been some need to gain more clarity or better understanding of relationships and other people. And I think with like the Cazimi conjunct the Sun, it's going to be really highlighting like, where am I, you know, shielding myself or hiding myself maybe from relationships, or is there self-sabotage going on, right? Mercury and the Sun. So it's about letting other people in and finding new ways to emotionally kind of connect. So this month it's going to be more about community. You know, end of August is going to be more about romantic relationships. And I'm loving with that eclipse Venus on your North Node. I do see that as people being more generous with you, or it could be some good news in the financial department, or maybe it could represent finding relationships that you feel like you want to hold on to or that you really truly value. So yeah, enjoy Venus going through your ascendant. I would imagine being an early degree Virgo rising with having like the South Node on your ascendant and Uranus squaring your ascendant, you kind of feel like maybe you're at a crossroads, either with your work or maybe even potentially with your kind of identity, or even with your career in some capacity. And if you're not working for whatever reason, or if this is less about your, you know, kind of professional reputation, it's more about how can I, you know, heal myself or become more independent, Uranus, or how can I break free from health issues or limitations so I feel like I have more freedom, and giving you the opportunity maybe to lean into opening up to new relationships or new ways of kind of identifying, you know, out in the world. So it's going to be an interesting time, I think, throughout the next year, watching Uranus square your ascendant and your descendant. But who knows, something really good in a partnership sense can definitely manifest as you're getting closer to the end of August. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Thanks, Lotus. It's early over there. All right. So who else do we have here? Hopefully Junie gets that. Sounds like she's going to come back and watch it. We've got Deanna and then Amanda. What's up, Deanna? What country are you in this week? Let's see what she says. There she is. All right, cashing in. I won't see this. I'm in, okay, Portugal. Anything I should know for this new moon? I'm having a blast and meeting new people. I'm back in Ireland on July 16th, and life is good finally. Okay. Oh, she's here. All right. What time is it there? What do you need to know about the new moon? Let's take a look. There we go. Well, I love that your astrology is so literal. You're having a new moon in your 12th house, which is about foreign lands, rest, recuperation, intuition, healing. And I have said to a lot of my Leo risings, I was like, enjoy this new moon, because as soon as we get to next month, everything is getting kicked off and it's like brand new. You know that the solar eclipse is going to be right on your ascendant. So I kind of see this as the final period of being able to bid farewell to things, people, places, situations that have made you feel maybe isolated, emotionally drained. And obviously it's very relational because it's opposing your sun. You're a Capricorn sun in your 12th. So you're like, I'm having a blast. I'm connecting with a bunch of foreigners and I'm meeting new people. And that's also tied to Mercury, you know, because Mercury is about friends and connections. You're going and exploring new places, but you're also returning back to places and also connecting with people who you haven't seen for a while. So all of those things kind of track. My thought is with 21, it's also about a renewal, because the Cazimi is going to happen of faith, right? Of faith in yourself, faith in community, maybe some much needed, you know, time to kind of rest and recuperate and feel like you're inspired by the people that you're around. So that way, when you come back and you return, you feel like you can talk about your stories, you can share your information, you know, in terms of your kind of explorations that you've had, people that you've met, places that you've gone. And it can definitely make some really great content. So that's just one way of looking at it. The moon does rule your 12th house while the sun is you. So it can represent, under the new moon, setting intentions in regards to, okay, I don't want to have to wait, 6 months to a year to finally give myself a break. I want to work in a way, or I want to do things in a way, Mercury, where I'm, maybe scheduling out things in advance, where I know I'm going to a retreat, or I'm going to meet with, a healing circle, or I know that I have a trip planned. So I'm not feeling like it's something that I'm waiting all year to have. I could also see with the square to your Pluto and your moon, okay, and also it's kind of slightly squaring transit Saturn, that this time away is going to shift the way that you connect, communicate, and also kind of like approach relationships, because that square to Pluto is like, okay, I can't kind of steer away from uncomfortable conversations or things that I need to tell people, or it could be about getting closure. And then the square to your moon tells me that you're going to probably feel this need to journal while you're traveling, or there could be some stuff that's kind of coming up where, it's bringing up where you need closure in relationships. Obviously Cancer is going to be about closure, but Libra is relationships. And the square to Saturn represents partnerships. And I almost feel, looking at your chart, that you're going to go back to Ireland, and there may be some friends that you're connecting with who are friends like with your ex, and you're going to be like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to run into him. Or maybe it's going to be people who are like, hey, so have you talked to him? Have you seen him? And that's going to bring up that uncomfortable square to Pluto in the moon. And sometimes in the 12th house, we're trying to be like incognito, or like we're trying to kind of, keep a low profile. But I feel like that's going to be hard to do, because people are going to be asking you questions, or somebody's going to see your media, they're going to know where you are, or a friend is going to tell another friend, hey, she's in town. So there might be some uncomfortable stuff, but eventually this will become a full moon in Cancer, and that's going to be later at the end of the year, right around Christmas time. And so if we think about all of the themes of healing, recuperating, taking time, traveling, when this becomes a full moon and the moon's in its home sign again, it's going to be opposing the sun at a 2. And this is going to start coming into, obviously, a square with Neptune, and that's going to be in your 8th house. So that may mean that you're wanting to travel, connect with people, but there is like a little bit more of like a financial edge to this. It's like, well, do I have the money to be traveling? Can I justify spending what I'm going to be spending, going somewhere? And naturally, I think you're going to see with like Jupiter retrograde and Mars retrograde over your ascendant, that there is another process, or like another kind of cocoon period where you're changing and you're transforming because of the nature of Jupiter. And Jupiter is also going to be about romantic partners. So maybe you're going to feel more open to romantic relationships by the time this is turning into a full moon. And look at how beautiful this is. It's right on top of your Jupiter within about 2-degree orb. So it can mean that because you started this new moon building community, sharing your stories, sharing all of your travels, you may consider, going back or traveling or doing something at the end of the year. And it may be about teaching or doing some kind of groups, or some kind of like healing groups, and showing some of your creative abilities, I think, like with your audience, or letting people know, hey, I'm going to be here. If anybody wants to come, I'm going to be doing this like course or this class or something. His family, 90% chance I can run into him. His daughter wants to have coffee. Love her. Yeah. So the uncomfortable conversations is going to be obviously the squares to Pluto. But what I actually like when planets are squaring the nodes. There is a slight square to your north and south node. And it means that there is a sense of like evolution. And I feel like you're going to show up probably without any expectations. Like I would go, not having expectations to meet with him, see him, or talk to him. But it's possible that the word is going to be getting back to other people. And I think you're going kind of being like, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm just here to do my thing. But it's possible because of the square to Saturn that somebody could say to you, well, why didn't you tell me that you were coming? Or why didn't you reach out to me? And you're going to be like, I was trying to keep a low profile. I'm also liking that Jupiter's conjunct your Mars, because that is telling me that some of the places you're going and feeling out may still be connected to whether or not you're considering moving, if not later this year, then sometime next year. So once you get to about the eclipse in August, so right around 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, the solar eclipse energy is going to start kicking in. So this is that last little bit of time that you have to kind of keep a low profile, take things slow, because after that, things are going to progress very quickly. And the eclipse is going to be making some really interesting aspects to your Mercury, obviously to transit Saturn. So it's almost like this new and improved version of you is going to start to kind of emerge from August on. So take some time to reflect. I like a new moon in the 12th house. Get some extra sleep, be by water, you know, do some intuitive kind of work, do some healing work. Maybe go to like a spa, or go somewhere where you can get like a massage or a facial, or you can kind of soak, because this is about pampering yourself, treating yourself, because Jupiter is there while you're in a foreign land. And anything mystical, magical, spiritual, all of that stuff is really great too. And I think it's going to bring you some much needed rest, so you're feeling kind of like creatively rejuvenated, right? Really exciting, especially in Cancer. I'm wondering, like, are you going to go to sacred sites at all? Do you have anything like that planned? Are you going to churches? Are there temples that you want to see? Is there going to be like museums that you're going to visit? Because this makes me feel like you're being inspired by something that's kind of going on out there. So can't wait to hear about your trip. Sounds like it's going to be absolutely amazing. So let me know what happens. Yeah, I hear lots of good things. I have some clients that live there. All right, we've got Amanda V, and then Erica and Elaine. You guys are next on deck. Miss Amanda. All right, let's see what she says. Amanda says, cashing in. All right, this is you, right? Yeah. Give me your insights on love and money. If you see anything I need to be mindful of the next few months. Still processing the breakup with the Sag rising Cancer sun from November. I moved back in November 2023 to my hometown in Georgia, but I miss things about living near the beach in South Carolina. I just sort of feel stuck in a rut. Okay, well, let's talk about it. You're welcome. All right, so you moved. I remember talking to you about that. Home is always going to represent, obviously, Jupiter, and Jupiter is starting to come into an opposition with Pluto. So I would speculate that's part of where like the funk is kind of coming in, where you're like, okay, you know, am I really feeling like I have that connection? Virgo rising whole signs, you're going to hear like, oh, it's time where you're kind of be resting and recuperating and having more private time. But like your chart registers more like, you know, obviously a Libra rising. So this tells me that once you get out of the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, let's say by the beginning of August, I think that you're going to be able to better get over Pluto retrograde, some of the hangups connected to having a broken heart and issues that are, you know, associated with dating or feeling disappointed, or some of the kind of powerful things that have happened that's made you feel like, okay, well, who's going to love me, right? And when Jupiter gets out of that opposition, so you're going to see it first hit the end of this month, and then once it starts coming into, I would actually say, a trine with Saturn. So that's going to be in August. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot more going on socially, like a lot more opportunities to like connect with old friends, go to parties, have celebrations, connect with your community, get invited to like a lot of family related things and things going on at people's houses, and just overall good stuff happening for your friends. That's going to trine Saturn. So it's going to also give you more support in relationship land. So it's more platonic, and then as you get into August, it's more romantic. I also think that, you know, Jupiter being really close by to Mercury in August means that if you're going and you're interacting with other people, and Leo could mean you're joining local clubs, or, you know, maybe you're, you know, getting invitations, maybe you decide to do some networking, you might meet somebody. Like when Mercury and Jupiter come into conjunction, I would say August 10th through the 15th, you may end up getting introduced to somebody, and it can be through a friend or through some new organization or kind of social pastime. And then Jupiter will have its very first trine to Saturn. So definitely better friends, better community, but more relationship opportunities. I think the home stuff is interesting because it's not just the fact that Jupiter's been opposing Pluto, because that's a pretty quick moving transit. It's that Neptune has been in a square to your Neptune. And there is like this kind of longing for, okay, I want a relationship. Okay, where is home? And it's back and forth. And now it's out of a square with your natal Neptune. And so is Saturn. But Saturn's coming into a square with your sun. See, part of the challenge here, having Neptune, the sun, and Jupiter all in your fourth house, is like you've got a memory like an elephant. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like you'll hold on to the past. And Capricorn in the fourth house is like, this always happens. And whether it's your family, your living situation, maybe even just emotional patterns, that you're feeling kind of stuck. And like there's a sense of you maybe reminiscing, you know, about home, and then you move back home and then you're like, oh, now I'm reminiscing about the other place that I used to live, right? So that's coming up. Positive stuff also is probably going to include the fact that now the North Node, for the first time in about 18 years, is going to start coming into conjunction with your natal Venus. And Venus is going to represent confidence, self-esteem, money. It's also going to be directly correlated with education, travel, your belief system. And North Node Venus can be like a really powerful time where there could be somebody who could come into your life that changes the way that you look at dating and relationships. Look for younger people, right? Fifth house. I would say you may notice there's like a flurry of you meeting Aquariuses, Cancers, and Leos, just because of the nature of your 28 degrees here. This is also where you had the solar eclipse in February of this year. So probably what you're going to end up seeing is like with that solar eclipse now getting reactivated with the North Node hitting it end of August. It's going to sit around 29 for a while. End of August, I would say all the way, man, it's going to be there for a minute, mid-October. The North Node in the fifth house just makes you want to have fun. You know, it makes you want to party. It makes you want to socialize. It may bring in new hobbies and new people who are kind of coming in as well. And I really encourage you to start thinking about how you can be diversifying something about your schedule. Like North Node Venus in the fifth house might mean that, you know, you take up something that's connected to graphic arts, or maybe something connected to astrology, or maybe you want to take art classes, or maybe you want to take a dance class. Something that you just enjoy, that just feels good being creative, and also opens the door maybe to, you know, meeting other kind of creative individuals as well. And one of the themes you're going to notice this year with the North Node going through your fifth house now, and the South Node and Mars going through your 11th, is that there will be like a reconnection with a lot of people you haven't seen in a while, and that can be good. But there's also this sense of being like, yeah, it's great, but like I'm feeling kind of burnt out with certain connections. Or like there are certain people that you feel like the karma is like concluding or completing with. So friends that you may not talk to anymore, or people who kind of fall off. And then the North Node in your fifth house is going to be, well, I have these new hobbies, or I have this new, you know, kind of boyfriend, or I've got this new kind of thing that I'm obsessed with doing. And you're going to be more focused on that than you are some of your friends. But soulmates can come in, at least, you know, kind of like platonic ones, you know, with Mars and Jupiter kind of meeting in your 11th house. So I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint where this is coming from. I think Jupiter and Pluto is one thing, but like Neptune square Neptune, we are longing for connection, and we're also longing for home. Give it a little bit of time for it to kind of settle in a little bit. Look for some of these opportunities through social allies and people who you're going to be connecting with, you know, to have like better relational opportunities. And anytime there's a planet that's going to be conjunct Jupiter, like I would say the Sun conjunct Jupiter, Mercury conjunct Jupiter, those are going to be your best days to meet people. So it looks like the Sun's going to come into conjunction with Jupiter right around the full moon in Aquarius, around the 29th of July. That Mercury-Jupiter conjunction is going to start building under the solar eclipse. So that'll be like August the 12th. And that's going to run, I would say, pretty much until about the 16th of August. And then by mid-August, Jupiter trining Saturn makes me feel like even if you're not in a relationship yet, Saturn's retrograde, you do have a lot of support that's coming from some of your kind of networks and your community. And also like a lot of good things that are going to happen either with your friends or with your family. So I do think it's going to help you kind of buffer out some of these Neptune squares so you don't feel so like lost or lonely. And because Venus deals with money, you kind of asked about that. North Node hitting Venus means you could make more money at work, you could get a new position, there could be a new job opportunity. You're going to notice that you're spending more money on entertainment, recreation. So like, you know, going to parties, going to clubs is like fifth house, going to casinos, going to like live concerts, and putting money into something that's going to be a risk. So be careful. But sometimes I see people have that transit and they start saying, well, I want to learn how to trade, you know, or I want to learn how to invest in crypto, right? Aquarius, or maybe I'm going to be investing in like this new creative venture. You don't know how it's going to pan out, but you're going to do it because it's something that you love doing. So focus on the love and the joy and the creativity, especially if that starts kind of building, you know, from August on. Yeah, it might take you away from some of your community, but I think it's actually going to be something that's really beneficial for you. And there is this natural kind of separation that you'll see happening at the beginning of next year. You're moving away from some of your old goals, some of your old friends. You're moving into new directions in terms of relationships, hobbies, and romantic kind of connections that I feel like is definitely going to be more fulfilling for you in the long term. Watching the north and the south node come into a square with your north and south node, woo, that's what we call the nodal square. So it's kind of like what you're used to doing and what you're supposed to do. Both things don't really make sense. So you have to learn to integrate the north node. So if you have like south node, Pluto, and Saturn in the second house, those are some heavy hitters where there could be fear of losing something, whether it's a person, you know, resources, a relationship. And it's saying that, like, look, loss is a part of life, but we want to focus on where we're growing and where we're more optimistic. I think, you know, fifth house, rather than, oh, fear of getting hurt. So this is a lot of participating in things because you love it. You know, there's no guarantee that, you know, a boyfriend's going to stay, or that, you know, a investment that you make is going to pay off, but you're going to be like, oh, I'm doing it for the thrill of it. You know, I'm enjoy doing it and kind of being in the moment. So you get out of that rigid kind of mindset of north node, you know, Taurus with the moon, south node Saturn in Scorpio, and you're just like, I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to take a chance. And the more that you get comfortable doing that, I think the easier you're going to break out of some of these kind of nodal aspects that you have. And also, the fifth house can very much be about like children. It could be about pregnancy. It could be about whether or not you want to be a mom. One of the best times to do that stuff, I would say, is when you have planets that are aspecting your fifth house. So Pluto is there, trining Uranus. You also have North Node coming in conjunction with Venus, and you're also going to be seeing that your fifth house lord, Uranus and Saturn, are an aspect to each other. So, you know, sometimes if you already have kids, when you say, yes, I have a business with my ex-husband and I've been so scared to sell out of that. No, do it. Fifth house means that you have to take a risk, and like it deals with other people's assets, right? Squaring Saturn is going to represent somebody who was family, and then, you know, the moon is going to be about joint assets. But you may potentially try your hand at doing your own thing. So if you decide that, you know, you want to sell the business or he wants to buy you out, you're going to have a lot of creative ideas over the next 2 years. And I really feel like it would be really wonderful to have something that's your own that you can kind of like create or give birth to, that would help be a placeholder right now for not having the relationship yet, or not having, you know, the other things kind of come full circle quite yet. The money stuff you're going to want to watch more in like October and November, so you're not there yet. But man, all my Libra risings are telling me they're just like, I'm just ready to let go of like certain friends, or, you know, I'm not as attached to some of my goals the way that I was now. And there's going to be something really significant with, I think, Venus hitting the North Node. If you have a daughter, that it's really prominent kind of turning points in the life of your daughter. And you're going to feel like you want to be there to kind of support her, or you want to be there to kind of watch her grow up. And that's going to become something that's like a huge priority for you. And the more that with the North Node Venus, you're kind of tapping into that, Jupiter is going to start coming into opposition. So it means that, you know, somehow maybe spoiling or spending more time or taking care of your daughter may actually end up kind of bringing in somebody else. I could see Jupiter in the 11th house. It's like, you know, you go to like a kid's birthday party and you meet another single dad, you know, or you go to a school recital or some kind of school event, and then it's like, boom, there's somebody watching you be a mom, and they're like, hey, what's up? So it can somehow be connected to something that's, you know, involving your daughter in some way, right? So hopefully that's helpful in giving you the insight that you're looking for. I do think that you're going to feel a lot better about where you're living once like the Neptune square is kind of wrapping up. So you'll see that as you're getting closer to the end of the year. Good luck. All right, so we're back in the queue. So we've got Erica and Elaine. You guys are up next. What's up, Rosie? I just saw your comment there. What's going on? All right, so let's pull up, let's see, Erica and then Elaine. You're welcome. Erica. Let's see, where is she? What's up, Erica? Want to make sure I've got the right one here. Let's see. There you go. Erica F. July 14th, 88, 7:09 p.m. She says, I'll be 38 on the new moon. I've done the work, I've healed, I've grown, but life has low-key felt on pause since COVID. Do you see things finally moving this year? Cap risings, be late bloomers? For sure. All right. So let's talk about this, because one of my favorite things, just personally, is when there's a new moon on my birthday. I think back to those years because I know that it represents like a complete reset, and you will notice, you know, leading up to your birthday. So you've been in this the last 2 weeks or so. It's very reflective. There's a lot of clearing stuff out. It's almost kind of like a solar eclipse for your birthday in a way. So having a new moon conjunct your natal moon means everything's getting flushed out and it's getting washed out, so that way you can set new intentions, which I really recommend doing for you. Not just because it's a new moon, but also because Mercury is retrograde. And look at how cool this is. On one hand, you've got a new moon conjunct your sun, so this means that it's really about focusing on renewal, change, transformation, intimate relationships, vulnerability, because that's what the sun rules. But also Mercury is retrograding over your sun. So you're kind of reflecting on what hasn't worked in relationships. Where do I want relationship renewal? So if you're committed, it's like, where can I have better relationships? If not, it's how can I open myself up to connecting with somebody again? Easier said than done when you're going through this Mercury retrograde in the 7th house, because you're seeing that a lot of the ways that you relate to other people are changing. It's kind of like those relational patterns are kind of breaking down, and it's like shedding old skin. I also think it's colorful to be a Capricorn rising going through this, because if you go back and you look at what was taking place last month in June, when the Mercury retrograde shadow began, it was squaring Saturn. So there was a lot of Capricorn risings being like, I'm stuck at home, I'm not making any headway, I really want to move, or I want to find a partner, or, you know, I want to meet somebody new, or I want commitment, I want to get married. But there is this kind of feeling of like, yeah, Saturn, Neptune in your 4th house, you know, feeling kind of weighed down and stuck in a family or a home or a living situational issue. So the Mercury retrograde is great to get a reading. You know, obviously getting insight is the 7th house from astrologers, therapists, what have you. And Mercury rules your 6th house of work and routine. So I think about Mercury squaring Saturn and I'm like, all right, well, it's going to be about you saying, how do I kind of diversify my daily routine? How do I get out of the house more? And maybe Mercury's, you know, kind of connection to your 6th house is maybe I need to be scheduling stuff into my schedule, so I'm more likely to go out and meet people. Maybe I'm joining a new gym, right? Connection to the 6th house. Uranus is there too. Maybe this can mean that you're reevaluating what hasn't worked in the past with relationships, and then you're setting those new intentions for connecting as you move forward. So if you look at this, other than those aspects, you have Jupiter coming into conjunction with your moon right here. And that means for the first time in 12 years, you have Jupiter the benefic bringing you blessings and opportunity for possibly something very positive. Jupiter rules your 3rd house, to connect, communicate, or maybe meet somebody new. And that'll be a quick moving transit. So you're going to see that happening here. So that's going to start up right around the end of July, and then it's going to go probably, I would say, as long as Mars conjunct your moon. So the end of July till about October is when you're in that window of potentially meeting someone. They say that you meet somebody where your 7th house Lord is. Your 7th house Lord is in the 7th house at a 6. So look for Leos, look for Virgos, and look for Libras. These are going to be the signs of the people who you're going to potentially start meeting. Maybe Sagittarius, because Jupiter is going to hit your moon too. And if you go back and you think about 2014, there could have, would have, should have been a pretty significant change that happened in a relationship, good or bad. Now this time around, having Jupiter hit your moon, you're also going to see that it's trining Saturn. So that's going to also enhance the likelihood of you potentially meeting somebody in August. And it can take really all year with that new moon being in your 7th house to kind of see it fully, you know, flush out. Watch what's going on maybe with the lunar eclipses, or watch what's going to be going on with the full moons, because that's more likely going to land you in a relationship. But having your sun and your moon in your 7th house is challenging because you've got both of your luminaries, kind of your conscious self and then also your subconscious self, the moon, sitting basically in your 7th, which means a lot of your identity is tied to relationships. And oftentimes, like a 7th house sun, they do have, you know, delayed marriage, or it takes a little bit longer for them to settle into a relationship. When the moon is referencing the sun, and you've got that kind of connection, the mutual reception, it's basically saying you have to really learn to kind of decipher where you start in relationships and where like other people begin, right? So there could be something like that that's kind of going on. I live out, I've been outside so much lately. The most I've been out in like 6 years. Good, because with Saturn in your fourth house, you can just get like just totally gloomy if you're staying inside too much. So that would be one of my biggest interpretations with this new moon. And obviously now that you're moving into your 38th year, you're going to be now kind of dancing with a Jupiter Pisces annual perfection year. So that's going to be highlighting your natal third house whole sign where you have your north node. So this basically means the themes of siblings, communication, learning, short distance travel, movement. And if you look at the ruler of the north node and also your third house, it's Jupiter. Jupiter's in your fifth. So what's going to happen? You're going to go out of town for the weekend. You're going to walk around the town more. You're possibly going to go to like local art shows or anything that's theatrical. I would take a cooking class because you have your Jupiter in Taurus. That might actually help you meet someone. And you can meet people online and you can go and, you know, have a lot more dates that can be coming up this year. And Jupiter's also sextiling your sun. So now that you're in your third house year, watch when, you know, Jupiter changes signs. You're definitely going to see some changes. Watch also when you have planets that are going to go through Pisces. So you'll have like a Pisces eclipse that's going to be happening at the end of next month. Right here. And that may provide another kind of shake up in your schedule or even with your dating life. And then you're going to want to watch when Jupiter retrogrades, which isn't going to be until the end of the year. But Jupiter and Mars will meet a couple times. So that tells me it's going to be more about like learning how to trust again and building intimate relationships and possibly opening up to, you know, connecting with people in a new way, which is literally what the new moon in your seventh house is about. I'm literally going to my 20th high school reunion at an art museum. See, there you go. And what's cool is like high school is the fifth house. That's where your Jupiter is. And, you know, the third house is things that are connected to your community. So who knows, you might connect with people from the past because you have that sun that's in your seventh house. Cancer is the past. And you're also going to notice that there's new people coming in with Jupiter hitting your moon, but there's this reconnection with old people as well. So there's a little bit of like sorting and sifting through, you know, who am I meant to reconnect with and like who's coming in that's going to be new. And I can tell you, a lot of my Capricorn risings have said to me over the last year with like Jupiter going into the seventh house, it didn't manifest as a relationship. I think a lot of that was just due to like when Jupiter ingressed into Cancer, it was squaring Saturn and Neptune. And if you notice, it was also squaring your Mars. So Saturn and Neptune sitting on your Mars is what's doing this. It's like, okay, I got to forge and kind of find my own way. And now that it's trining your moon, the more independent that you are, the more curious, the more that you're learning, the more that you're going out and you're doing things, the more likely you're going to connect with people. And I'd be really surprised if a relationship does not come of this for this next year for you. Because next year, when you go into your Mars Aries year, it means that there's going to be some new turning point where you're going to be kind of hitting reset and potentially like making a change with where you're living. I mean, Moon trines Mars. You might potentially start thinking more seriously about settling down, or you know, if you want to, you know, build a life with somebody. And you'll notice that with the Capricorn moons that are going to be starting next summer as well. I've looked at a lot of those for Capricorn risings, and I'm like, you're going to have a relationship that's going to be evolving, and you're going to feel like you have to move. Yes, we got Rob with Jupiter in the seventh. Yeah, I know what that's like. It's my Jupiter return, and it was kind of squaring Saturn. So. But there's lessons to be learned there. Saturn is basically saying there's work that needs to be done before we kind of expand. And I kind of feel like for you, it's communication lessons because it's in your Placidus third. So learning how to be more confident, learning how to be more curious, learning how to be more independent, you know, going out, not waiting for people to reach out to you, you taking the reins. And your partner will like that because you have a Leo moon. So it's going to be somebody who's going to be, you know, liking your confidence. And Pluto opposing your moon too. That's playing out over like the next year or so. So that tells me you have to have a really strong sense of your own identity and who you are, so that way there isn't any trauma, drama, or power struggles that's potentially going to be happening with others. Something I like to do when there's a new moon, I sit down and I write a list of all the things that I'm kind of like focusing on and trying to manifest for the next year. And I'll put it in a jar with like a couple crystals or whatever, and then seal it up with some wax. Put it somewhere where you're going to see it. But more importantly, put it somewhere where it's going to see sunlight and moonlight. So put it in a window that you know is going to get both of those, because you have the sun and the moon in your seventh. So you can manifest changes in relationships or, you know, personal goals or anything like that that you want to change. And then when it's your birthday next year, open it up. You'll be surprised, I think, how many of the things that you set intentions on actually end up manifesting. So happy almost birthday to you. I hope it's a good one. Really cool watching Jupiter hit your moon. That's a fun transit. Lots of indulging in good food. That's the one thing that I've noticed. All right. We have got Elaine and then Lula. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I want to make sure everybody gets a thorough reading. Let's see. Where is Miss Elaine? March 7th. No, was that 7th? March 9th. What's up, Rosie? Oh, Candace, I have a question. When you leave a snack for your ancestors, what do you do with the snack? Leave it outside, don't eat it. You don't eat it. You don't eat it. Honestly, I mean, it depends on what it is. So if it's something that's like biodegradable, that doesn't have a wrapper, if it's like fruit or if it's bread or something, I'll just go and, toss it outside, let the birds eat it. But if it does have wrappers or plastic or whatever, I generally will throw it away. And don't be giving them anything that's heavily salted. Unless it's something specific that like a family member liked, you don't want to be putting a lot of salt on the food. All right, so Elaine says, March 9th, 1987, every aspect of my life is pretty intense. The only thing that is smooth and stable is my love life. Well, that's good. My career is dissolving and I'm on sick leave for mental health with no return to work in sight. Let me know what you see. Thanks. All right, so I'm glad to hear relationships are going well. That seems to be kind of like the safety of the 7th house. Not a lot of Sag risings are telling me that things are going well in their relationships just due to the nature of Mars and Uranus in their 7th. But maybe the square to the nodes is that you have somebody you're talking to, and it looks like it's more than one person, right? Gemini could be an astrologer, a therapist, a sibling. Maybe you have a career kind of coach or, something like that. But definitely having people you can kind of communicate with is really helpful. And I would also say the North Node coming into conjunction with your Mercury is really highlighting the fact that you need a lot of feedback from other people right now. And North Node conjunct Mercury, if you're going to have a mental breakdown, this would be probably the most supported time to be having that, because the North Node on top of your Mercury retrograde means that it's giving you the opportunity to reevaluate and reassess where you stand mentally. It's in your Placidus 3rd house, so it's kind of like learning breath work, learning to journal, going for walks, slowing down, processing things, and tapping into kind of your emotions so that way you're not getting rattled. And Uranus has been squaring Mercury off and on for the last year, so I think that's also bringing up maybe some issues kind of connected to mental health. But it looks like you have a support team, so that's really, really, really wonderful. She says it's been intense, but hopefully it's good news. Health stuff's going to be more Venus, and that is going to be the Pluto transit, where Pluto had got all the way up to 5 degrees. It created potentially some drama or ending or, a definitive end or a pause with work. And it's in the 2nd house, so it's bringing up for you well, what's going to happen with money, right? And you've also had Saturn and Neptune squaring your moon. Fuck. I mean, these are a lot of transits happening all at the same time. So it's it's not just you. There's a lot of things that's putting a lot of pressure on you, particularly, I would say, psychologically. Are you, okay, cool, so your husband's good. Are you working with a therapist? Because Neptune square your moon can definitely bring up depression or, loneliness, hopelessness, disappointment, disillusionment. And Neptune's also been right on top of your Jupiter. I'm waiting to see a psych, but it's so long to find one. So something that I would really focus on right now would be your planetary ruler, and that's Jupiter. And Jupiter rules you as a Sag rising, and it's in the 4th house, technically whole sign 5th. So one question I would have is, is there stuff that's connected to your home life, maybe that's been challenging, not necessarily your marriage, but not being satisfied with where you're living or questioning whether or not you should move? Has there been some family related issues or some childhood kind of issues that are now starting to kind of peep up? And now you're finally dealing with stuff that maybe has been kind of lingering there for quite a while. You're also going to see that, Uranus is going to be sextiling Jupiter. So, having an astrologer, a therapist, a supportive husband, all of those things are going to kind of help you get out of this. And that'll be happening intermittently throughout the year. And anybody who's got planets around, I would say 4, 5, 6 degrees of the air and fire signs are getting hit the hardest. So Pluto on your Venus, where it's bringing up some scarcity issues, Neptune on your Jupiter, which is kind of bringing a dissolving of like an old way of emotionally feeling, relating to family or living. Uranus, which is kind of shaking up things in terms of your support system, and Jupiter, which is about to go into your whole sign 9th, is going to shift something about your philosophy. And where I think Sag risings are going to get a little rocked this year, they're going to start to see Jupiter in opposition to Pluto, brings up a lot of like questioning their faith, questioning their belief system, questioning whether or not they want to travel, go back to school, go on a bit of like a sabbatical, and first it's dealing with the mindset, but then you're going to start to see things are going to start to significantly shift as you're getting into August, because this will be the first Jupiter-Saturn trine. So you might start feeling actually quite a bit better in August, and I would really encourage you to either travel or be considering continuing education to possibly segue into something that you're going to love more. Your North Node's obviously in Aries in your 4th house. So with Saturn sitting there, it's trying to get you to focus on how you are building a more solid foundation for yourself emotionally, and anything that's kind of connected to your home and family. So for example, if everything's good, right? Like most people who would be having these transits would be like, my husband walked out on me, I have nowhere to live, I'm losing my mind, and like you've got a lot of support because of the sextiles and the trines that are going on. She says, I'm in the military and I just can't do it anymore. So it's possible that if you're no longer bound to having to kind of have a position like that, you start thinking about, well, could I live somewhere else? Or, is it time for me to be thinking about, possibly having like a business that I would start, or working from home, or possibly giving you the opportunity to think about, kids or family. I mean, it is your whole sign 5th house. So I don't know if you have children or if you've been thinking about doing that. And I'm not saying that right now. I'm saying that maybe this whole break in what's going on with your work and your routine is making you realize I've been going through the motions, but I haven't been taking care of myself. And maybe it is time for me to start thinking about what I'm building at home rather than feeling like I have to keep pushing myself professionally. And that's been a lot of the nature of the South Node eclipses that have been in Virgo. You will have an opportunity should you decide to go back. I'm cautious to tell you exactly when that's going to be because I can see several different periods, but one would possibly be when you have Mercury's off your North Node, Uranus isn't squaring it, and you're going to see probably right around here when Virgo is coming into your 10th. So you're looking at anywhere, I would say, maybe December of 2026 through April of 2027. But I think that if this were me, if you haven't already cashed in on being able to go to school or getting like a grant or getting something, paid for by the military to get an education, this would be the time to cash in on that at the beginning of next year. Because Mars will retrograde in your 10th house, where you're no longer having to kind of be a part of the military and you're kind of shifting out of one position and you're going into the 9th, where it could be, hey, I want to be a teacher, or I want to go and get some training, or I want to get a degree, or, something like that. I think I would like to retire. So, I mean, you can do that, but part of what's going to happen with Saturn being on your North Node in the 4th house is it's either going to try to get you to move, or it's going to try to get you to start a family, or it's going to try to get you to start your own business. No kids, and I'm too old for that now. Don't threaten the universe is one thing I would say. Because Saturn is sitting on your North Node and it is ruled by Mars, and Mars is going to retrograde. You might actually feel differently at the beginning of next year. And it doesn't mean you have to have a kid. It could mean that there is going to be something that you are going to create, because Aries is your whole sign 5th. That is going to be like your baby. So I would start thinking about, while you have this time off, number one, make your mental health your priority right now. Especially while the North Node is conjunct Pisces, because you're still in some uncharted kind of territory until you get out of this next Pisces eclipse at the end of August. And when that full moon lunar eclipse hits on your Mercury, It means that you're still going to be a little sensitive. It will square Uranus, so it is going to be bringing up the need that you're definitely going to need to be meeting with somebody. You're having like a therapist or a psychologist that you're working with, and it's going to create a grand mutable cross in your chart. So it means that, you know, you're kind of realizing, okay, I really am going to be staying home for a little bit longer than I anticipated. I am working my way out of, you know, having to be in the service. I do need to be feeling like I'm going to be working with somebody who's going to help get me stable and give me some direction. And then you'll start to notice as these eclipses start to kind of wash out, it's setting you up with Saturn trine Mars to either be traveling or potentially considering, you know, taking classes. It doesn't mean you have to go back to school, but taking classes, learning, having purpose. And Mars and Jupiter in your 9th house might have you feeling like, well, I would really like to do some training, or I'd really like to do some traveling. Pay attention to that. There can be something there. And then by the time you see Pluto come off your Venus next year, and you see Neptune come off of your Jupiter, I think you're going to be a very different person next spring. You know, these are some long-lasting transits. Pluto moves very slow, Neptune moves very slow, Uranus moves very slow. And the fact that you have a roof over your head and you have a stable relationship is like, most people are not having these things with some of these aspects. So if you have the time, you have the space, you have the capacity, and the people who are going to help you, give yourself a little bit of a break so that way you can do some healing. Because I don't think a lot of the things are purely connected to just your job. I don't doubt that they are, especially if you're ex-military. But I look at some of your natal aspects, like your moon in the 8th house opposed Neptune. That tells me that there could be some childhood trauma or some issues with repressed emotions or issues that are connected to addiction in your family, family-related issues with women. And then I also look at your natal Mercury retrograde and the fact that it squares your ascendant and your descendant. And that tells me that you have a lot of feelings, but you don't know how to express them or how to communicate, right? And how to get all that stuff out. She says, I believe with the therapy, I won't be back until next spring. So like I said, you know, March, April, that's when things really start to kind of clear. And I would, if I had, you know, what you have going on, I think with Jupiter and Mars being in the 9th house, I would start maybe considering getting into art therapy, sound therapy, maybe do a retreat, or you can go and like connect with like other women, especially if they're ex-military, with some of the trines that you're going to have to Saturn and also your North Node. And having your North Node in the 4th house and Saturn being there, it means that you're just going to have a year where you're just feeling like you're having to kind of literally emotionally pull up all of the floors and like restabilize the foundation in your life. And usually with that comes a lot of family karma. So Jupiter square your Neptune and your moon and the nodes. I mean, my God, you've got planets that square your nodes on both sides. Something about Neptune tells me that there's something that you don't see either emotionally or something connected to your family, and like people not being emotionally available or emotionally absent or abandoning or not having a true understanding of where you come from. And like maybe there's going to be some cat that comes out of the bag, you know, where you're like, wow, okay, we had a family member that dealt with similar issues, and you're like, what? This is the first that I'm hearing of it, because it's ancestrally kind of baked into your chart. And I don't know your family history, you know, on your parents' side, but I would be curious if you've had other people who have had similar issues and like maybe went undiagnosed or they didn't deal with it. So talking to a therapist, especially with, you know, Chiron in your 7th in opposition to Saturn and Uranus, can be exceptionally helpful to recognize and realize that you may have some emotional patterns that you thought were normal, but they're not normal, and there can be some tendency to repress your feelings, and then it can manifest as well having health problems, right? Especially Saturn and Uranus in your 1st house. A lot of people who have that, they've got all kinds of issues connected to their nerves. They've got issues with their back, with their hips and their thighs, Sagittarius, and that's opposing Chiron. So you'll, you know, literally, you know, hold on to all kinds of either pain or pressure or other things, and like there's no way to diffuse it because it's squaring some of the stuff in your chart. So yeah, work with a therapist, travel, you know, change something about your philosophy, have a really devout spiritual practice with Jupiter kind of going into your 9th house, and watch for the teachers and the mentors and the people that are going to be coming in. You know, if you want to take an art class, you want to learn something new, you want to learn language, you know, kind of very Sagittarius things, this would be the time to do that and just feel like you can continue to grow and learn and evolve like all Sag risings want to do, without feeling like it has to correlate or translate to, you know, having a job. But learning about the North Node conjunct Mercury, dream interpretation, Obviously, anything that's Piscean, so it could be about getting readings, it could be about learning divination. I also feel like there's going to be some really important conversations that you're going to have with family, be that, your immediate family you live with, or, your extended family, and maybe even siblings, about some of the stuff that's going on, and kind of opening the door to having, better support that's going to be coming from siblings, so you feel like you've got like a whole support team. And then yes, come March, April of next year, things start to kind of level off in this chart. So hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight. I hope that you're allowing yourself to just kind of like regulate and not feeling like you have to be feeling bad because you're not doing anything. Mars and Taurus connected to the 6th house. They're always kind of busy and they're like working, but it's going to take time to kind of like regulate the nervous system and like, obviously give you some time to, come back from burnout or from any issues that have been kind of suppressed emotionally. Really challenging to have that Cancer moon in the 8th house. I've got probably a dozen clients that I've talked to over the last year or so who have been going through the Saturn-Neptune square, and it has not been pretty. Especially the 8th house does deal with a lot with like trauma and things that we've been afraid to kind of face. So I'm glad that you're taking the time to kind of do some of that stuff. Definitely swing back and let me know what happens with some of these transits, especially as you're kind of getting into the beginning of next year with the Mars retrograde, because you may feel that you have the drive to start thinking about what's going to be next. Even though you're not working, you're going to start thinking about what the next thing is going to be that you would like to do. And I would say choose something fun, choose something creative, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we have got, who's next? Lula, and then after that we're going to have Brianna. Let's see. How did she spell that? All right, let's see here. For Miss Lula, all right, so she says July 13th, 1999, 1:05 a.m. And she says, when will I be in a relationship? I have been single since 2022. You're welcome, Elaine. All right, my dear. Let's talk a little bit about relationships. So let's see. You are 26. You're going to be 27. So you're going into an annual perfection. Year 4, ruled by the sun. And relationships are going to be tied to Mars and Pluto. Okay. So there's a couple different techniques that I use. We'll kind of go through them. But I would say right now, because Pluto and Mars rule your 7th house of relationships, you have been experiencing throughout this last year an opening square between Pluto and Mars, which creates a little bit of tension and a transformation of your beliefs about relationships and commitment. School, studies, traveling, definitely puts a cramp on your schedule and can make it a little bit more difficult for you to commit into partnerships. And then you've also been experiencing Pluto in conjunction to Neptune, where there's been a lot of shifts in regards to your direction with your career, feeling maybe fearful or afraid that you're missing, kind of relationship opportunities, while Jupiter is coming in opposing that. So there's one thing I can tell you is like the next month is not really relationship time. Okay, so we got to wait until Jupiter and Pluto come out of that opposition. So that's going to be kind of closer to the end of July going into August. Number 2 is that natal Pluto is also important. And if you look at your natal Pluto, you have got it in the 7th house, okay, and it's conjunct Chiron and Juno. So there is, with Pluto retrograde, you're going to go through a lot of changes in relationships throughout your life. And I think that being at 8 degrees tells me that your beliefs about relationships are going to change as you kind of get older and you evolve. And if you look at your chart, you've got Venus squaring Pluto. And right now the South Node is hitting Venus. So that's also a longing period for relationships. By the way, happy Venus return. I think you just had your Venus return yesterday or today, so it's kind of a power up period for relationships for you right now. And you've got transit Uranus opposing your Pluto. So girl, into this next year, there are still some heavy hitting planets that tell me it's not necessarily all going to settle in, and you may have people that are going to come in during certain windows, but there is still a process of you having to evolve, and Uranus in your first house means having freedom, not having a lot of attachment. So you'll see it next year start coming into an opposition with Pluto, and I can only just assume this is when there's going to be fireworks, and that'll be like July and August of 2027. And when those two start to separate, and then you start to see Jupiter coming into a sextile with your descendant, to me, it looks like relationships next fall begin to stabilize a little bit more. And that's going to be because Jupiter is expanding relationships. You know, Pluto is also sextiling your Pluto. And you could meet somebody sooner than that, right? You could. But for right now, I feel more inclined to tell you this is still going to take another year before you're starting to see clarity. And if you've spoken to an astrologer, I know I've looked at your chart before, they'll tell you, just due to the nature of your Mars square Neptune, where you're like, what do I have to do to get into relationships? Where do I have to look? And also Mercury squaring Mars in Neptune is a lot of, well, you know, do I want to focus on settling down, right? Mercury, North Node in the 4th. I want to settle down. I want commitment, you know, especially Venus there. And you find that you kind of meet difficult partners or people who have different cultural backgrounds or maybe different religious beliefs or kind of philosophies about relationships. So some of these things you're working with as you get older. But I guess the real question is, when is there a window in time that shows me that somebody could come in? Well, number one, Venus is now moving through your 5th house. So it's a good 3-week period. If you want to be trying to meet people and date, you can. We're also going to be watching when Mars is going to be coming into conjunction with your moon. So this is going to be early September. Mars, your 7th house lord, is hitting your moon and your sun. So there could also be some connections there. But my focus is actually going to be on the Venus retrograde, because you're a Taurus rising, so you're ruled by Venus. You want security, stability, pleasure, beauty. And like if you're a Taurus rising, you attract Scorpio type people, right? So you attract intense people, people who can be stubborn, Taurus is too, but stubborn and also a little bit combative in a way, or people who are reluctant maybe to want to be vulnerable. Now, naturally, when Venus goes retrograde, it's harder to find commitment or pleasure. So I just want to preface this by saying not all retrogrades are bad. If you're going through a dry spell or you've been, you know, super single, a Venus retrograde connected to your 7th house could bring you back into relationship or harmony, okay? So that's the positive thing. But I haven't even started talking about this yet. I'm going to be doing a webinar pretty soon on this. And like, this is the nastiest Venus retrograde I have seen in a very long time because it's like a triple threat. We've got Venus retrograde, so it's harder to see commitment. There's a lot of karmic things happening in relationship, good or bad. There's themes of betrayal and things where, you know, people are not necessarily honest or faithful. It's going to turn retrograde around 8 degrees, which is going to represent a major change or transformation. It's also going to be conjunct Mercury, so there's going to be a lot of people who are getting exposed or a lot of people who are changing their mind about relationships. And simultaneously, this is going to be influenced by Mars and Pluto. Well, what happens when Venus starts turning retrograde? It's squaring Mars, it's squaring Pluto. Literally the nastiest Venus retrograde that I can think of. And you're young, but the last time that we had this Venus retrograde was in the fall of 2018. Okay, so I mean, that was a while ago. You're like, what, 27, 26, 27? So maybe think about what happened. Was that like the first time you got your heart broken, right? Venus retrograde in your 7th. What happened then? Now, at the same time, I'm like, well, Mars is going to be, you know, conjunct your North Node. And that means that you're going to be saying, well, I'm trying to find stability, or I want to find somebody I can kind of settle down with. And Venus is going to retrograde over your Mars. So I bet you dollars to donuts, there's going to be somebody who's going to come into your life. And I would say watch for this person to arrive maybe mid-September, so like the 12th, 13th, 14th. If not, then the next window is going to be when Venus turns retrograde around early October. It'll conjunct Mercury, so you could meet somebody at work or like at the gym. And then you're going to see it come back into conjunction with your Venus. So something else is going to happen around October 20th through the 23rd. And then Mercury retrogrades, you know, in your 7th house. It's like, girl, there might be people that come, might be people that go, but your relationships definitely start to stabilize once these two planets are now direct. So from about November 14th, 15th on, suddenly there's a little bit more clarity in what you want in relationship land. Boom, Mars comes into conjunction with Venus. So I think things are a lot stronger in relationships by the end of November. I would tell you, don't take any shit from anyone. People might come back to you, or you might meet somebody who feels like super karmic during that period. And then the other thing that I would watch would be your progressions. And these are your secondary. So this is how your chart evolves over time. You've got a Gemini rising, you've got a moon in Cancer, you've got a sun in Leo, and Sagittarius is your 7th, which means your 7th house is ruled by Jupiter, and Pluto is squaring that right now. So that's part of what's going on. Usually when I see some kind of connection between the Ascendant Lord and the 7th house Lord, so this would be Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury is at 29, Jupiter is at 4, and over the next 4 years, they're going to square. So that tells me you're basically talking to people about what it is you value, what you're looking for security. And there could be some tension over the next couple of years, but I have a feeling as soon as you see a really strong Jupiter transit, somebody can come in. Well, look at this. Jupiter's going to hit your progressed sun. So you might meet somebody while you're going out of town or traveling in the fall. You might meet somebody on an app. And then you're going to see Jupiter and Mars retrograde over your sun. So you might meet somebody at work. And that comes up again in the spring of next year. Okay? And then once Mercury goes into Leo, so that's going to be a little ways. There we go. In 2029, when the North Node's in your 7th house, it's very likely once you start getting into these eclipses, maybe you're getting married. So, seems really strong for commitment at the end of 2028. And then it also seems pretty significant when they get into Sag, the end of 2029. So it's around the corner, but you have some time here for your chart basically to kind of mature. That's the long and short of it. And because you have that natal Saturn and Jupiter in your 7th, in your 12th, you're learning in this lifetime to like take time to pause, reflect, you know, take time to yourself. And look at Jupiter opposes Mars. Saturn by sign opposes Scorpio. And Jupiter is going to be dealing with change and transformation. So I feel like with a chart like this, like you just attract people who are wounded, and that's not your fault. That's just Chiron and Pluto. And you need people who, rather than are keeping you in the dark, are going to be open about their struggles, their issues, their insecurities. And generally, I want to look for positive aspects between Mars and Venus to see, like, is she going to get married? You know, yes, Mars and Venus sextile each other. You should get married. You should also have children. You've also got Venus that trines Jupiter. So you're just having to wait for some of this astrology to kind of play out. I want to look at one other thing here. Solar arc, to see if there's anything going on there. 20 degrees, 25 degrees, and this is 27. Uranus has been there. Yeah, just relationships haven't really stuck. But you're going to notice with Jupiter hitting your progressed Leo planets in your chart, dating online, meeting people locally, getting out of town for the weekend, getting on apps, right? Like you might meet a lot of people those ways. And anybody who has interest in anything that's like artistic, creative, or connected to like entertainment might be good ways to meet people. And your big year for relationships, in my opinion, is always 28 and 30. Okay, so those are the years. When you go into an annual perfection, year 5, which is going to be about love. And then when you go into an annual perfection, year 30, which is going to be about commitment. And if I look at your 5th house ruler, it's Venus and it's in the 4th. So there may be a back and forth you're doing with somebody when you're 28 about whether or not you're going to commit to each other, if you're going to live together, if you want the same things. And then as you're getting closer to, obviously, 30, that's going to be when you're going to start to kind of figure out whether or not that's going to stick. But long story short, window of opportunity, definitely over the next month. Be careful with relationships October and November. I'm leaning in the direction of things being a lot more clear for you next year. October, November of 2026 and 2027, you're going to have retrogrades in your 7th house, putting the pressure on you to communicate with people what it is that you need for security. Having a natal Saturn and Jupiter being in Taurus, that's always something that you're thinking about is like, am I safe? Do I have security? Do I have what I need? Yes. But your chart's going to get better with time. And I think the lesson here is that it's not that you're not finding love, it's that you're literally waiting for somebody else to mature, or you're waiting for somebody else to kind of work through some of their issues so you guys can ultimately come together. Got a new moon on your birthday too, babe. So knowing that you're going to have a new moon in your 3rd house, it's a new mindset that's coming in, and it's going to start trining your 7th. So it's going to give you the opportunity, I think, to be more, communicate with other people, telling them what you need and what you're kind of looking for, asking questions, getting to know them in that way. And I would be saying pets are going to enhance relationships, being healthy, working out. You might meet somebody at work. That's another way of looking at it. And look for people who are going to be Virgos, Tauruses, or Scorpios. Also, watch out for early Sagittariuses. Those can cause some problems with your Pluto. So I think you're going to be better off kind of trying to maybe match up with somebody who's got some Scorpio placements, maybe some Virgo placements. They're going to be a lot friendlier, I think, with some of the aspects in your chart. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we have Brianna and then Alyssa. What's up, Brianna? Let's see. Brianna says, astrology question. I have a trip planned to travel out of state on July 21st to the 24th, and I'm needing a professional to advise me if I should avoid driving during those dates. All right, so this is for 125/88, 921 in Sacramento. So you're a Virgo rising, moon in Taurus, and your sun is in Aquarius. I'm curious what made you ask this question. Because you have Pluto, the ruler. Come on. Sorry, guys. My PayPal's being a pain in the ass. You've got Pluto, which is your ruler of your 3rd house, which is about traveling and anything that's kind of connected to cars and vehicles, sitting on your sun. Oh, okay. So you're in a 3rd house here. Got it. So basically what I want to get at is that this is not an isolated incident where you're going to be seeing just, those dates while you're going to be traveling. The fact that you're in a 3rd house here, Pluto is your ruler, as is Mars, and the fact that you've got Pluto that's going to be conjunct your sun for the better part of like the next year means just in general, you need to be aware of your blind spots, okay? Literally or figuratively. If there's bad weather, if you can't see, if you're tired and you're falling asleep at the wheel, if, you're having also fears and anxiety and stress. 12th house is like fears and phobias of what? Pluto on the sun. Oh, I'm driving and then I die, So like, don't let it freak you out. What you want to watch out is where you're going to have Mars-Pluto squares. So like, for example, when Mars goes into Leo and it starts opposing Pluto, that's where you need to pay attention. When Mars goes into Leo and it starts squaring your natal Pluto, that's where you need to pay attention. Retrogrades that are going to be taking place over your natal Pluto, and so on and so forth. Hard aspects between Mars and Pluto is what I would be watching for. So let's look at the specific dates that you were asking me about. Let me pull this up again. Sorry. And it looks like that was July 21st through the 24th. Where are you going? So yeah, the moon is going to be going through your 3rd house and it's going to be squaring Pluto. So that's one hit. The other one is you're going to have Jupiter, which represents relationships and partnerships, opposing your Pluto and squaring the moon. That's another hit. What else is going on? Saturn rules your sun. Saturn's not really doing anything. So you do have a couple of things that I'm like, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you should avoid traveling. Moon is going to be going through your third house, so it does look like you're going to be on the road. 2, 3, 4. And then the moon is going to hit Mars in your third house, and it's going to sextile Pluto. Honestly, I would be more concerned if there were Mars aspects, but there are not. So I think the fact that, let's go back. When you see the moon going through Scorpio, like, yes, it's going to be in your third house, but you have that once a month. And I would say, like, all year when the moon goes through Scorpio, pay attention. But it's going to trine your planetary ruler, Mercury. Now it's retrograde, so you're wanting to kind of get away from it all and you want to take a trip. And it's also going to be trining Venus, which I think is going to ensure that you have safe passage. So the fact that you have a grand water trine makes me feel better. Accidents are more actually connected to your 6th house more than anything, just accidents in general, not necessarily driving. And that's going to be more Uranus, right? So there's nothing that is going to be involving the moon that's going to aspect Uranus. But you are going to be seeing that Pluto is trining and Jupiter is sextiling. So no, I don't have an issue with you traveling during that time. I would just say, just for future reference, this is where you're going to want to pay attention. You're in that Mars year. So when Mars squares Saturn, right around the end of July, the end of August, beginning of September, this is where you need to be more careful. Okay, so like right here. You know, July 30th, 31st, you know, the September 1st. And then you also need to be more careful here. When Mars opposes Pluto, starting at the end of September to the beginning of October, and when this squares Venus and Mercury retrograde on your Pluto. Because that's going to be in your 3rd house. And that could represent, okay, there is a blind spot, you know, and I don't see what I'm doing when I'm driving or I'm traveling. And like, that's off and on in all of October into November. So make sure you're insured. Saturn's in your whole sign 8th. Make sure also that everything is in working order. Scorpio retrogrades can represent issues going on with oil or things that are connected to like filters or things that, you know, need to be kind of cleaned out. And the Cazimi with Venus and the Sun could represent a loss. I'm not saying that to freak you out, but that's going to be here. Losses is the Sun. It's connected to the South Node. Venus is going to be valuables, things that you own, connected also to Mars, right? And Mars has been recently in opposition and a square to Pluto. So focus more on some of the hard aspects with Mars and Pluto this year, and the Mercury and the Venus retrograde. Don't go buying a car. Don't make any changes to your car. Keep an eye on your vehicle. And don't leave any valuables in your car, because the car could get broken into with some of those aspects, right? Good question, though. Good question. Saturn trining your Mars, too. I mean, it's supportive in a way. But Saturn quincunxure Pluto definitely brings up some vehicle issues. Have you had any issues yet this year? Because your birthday, I mean, it was 6-7 months ago. So maybe go back and look at when Mars was in Taurus, what was happening there, if there was anything that kind of came up that rattled you a little bit. And think back to what happened during the last Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, because you will see some of the themes. It's just going to be louder this year because you're in your 3rd house year. But I hope you have a lot of fun going on your trip. Here's a fun fact also, because Jupiter is going to be influencing the Mercury and the Venus retrograde to some extent, I highly, highly, highly recommend putting a saint figurine in your car to help protect from things getting destroyed or lost. So you don't have to put like an actual statue. You can go and get like a saint card. And what is it? Is it Saint Christopher? I think that's who it is. Whatever the patron saint is of traveling, you want to have that in your car. Saint Germain. Is it Saint Germain? Maybe it is. Put it in your car. Put it somewhere hidden, right? 12th house. Somewhere near a light. So if you've got like one of those like little, like, you know, those boxes that holds like sunglasses and stuff, put something in there. That'll help. And you might get some minor wear and tear on your vehicle or something that's scratched or something like that during some of those retrogrades. But having something in there that's going to be a metal, it has to be metal. If you have like a medallion, or if you've got like a coin or something that's got red on it, red or gold. And make sure it's hidden and it's high up. So put it in your visor, put it somewhere like that. Good. That's a good remedy. Hopefully that's helpful for you, and safe travels. All right, we've got Alyssa and then Silk. All right, Miss Alyssa's back. She has the Synastry time. I think we looked at this before. There we go. Let's see. And 3/20/1991. So here's you. And then we're looking at him, 1/16/2001. And I think that was at 9:58, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah, 9:58 a.m. All right, Miss Alyssa's back. We're taking a look at her boo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about his chart, and then we'll talk about your Synastry now that we can see his time. So January 16, 2001, 9:58 a.m. In Hawaii. So he's a Pisces rising, Sun in Capricorn, Moon in Scorpio. Woof, Moon and Mars in the 8th house. Well, I think that's a lot of water that he's got in his chart. Scorpio Moon, 8th house Moon, Venus rising. I like that. He's probably got really pretty eyes. And that Venus trines his Mars, it trines the North Node. So like, he's got a little bit of soul for a Capricorn. Like he's not like super stuffy like you would traditionally see. And his Sun also trines Saturn too, and it sextiles his Mars. So I like some of these aspects. For his relationships, Mercury rules the 7th, and Mercury is technically just barely hanging on. Mercury is in his 11th house. So that can mean that relationships start through friendships, and with like Mercury and Neptune in conjunction, otherworldly spiritual connections, dreams about each other, kind of psychically tapping in and kind of connecting to others. And he's going through a Pluto-Neptune transit right now. So that tells me that there is a lot transforming just in terms of who he is and how he's showing up in relationship to other people. And he may have like a partner that's talking to him about astrology. So I wonder if that's you. All right, so let's put your guys' charts together. We're going to first start with yours, and then we're going to look at his, and we'll flip it around. So we've got you here, and that's 3/20/1991. And so we look at the houses where we have the angular houses, the 7th, the 10th, the 4th, and the ascendant. And the first thing that my eye kind of catches is that his Sun is conjunct your North Node. So that means that you feel like, because you're ruled by the Sun, that you're like, oh, I'm here to do some kind of work with this person, right? 6th house, literally working together, working out together, helping kind of grow and evolve in your habits. So accountability and holding you accountable for healthy habits might be a theme, but helping each other or working out or kind of being there to support one another is like another theme. I also noticed that he's got his Neptune right on your descendant, which I gotta be honest with you, is not my favorite aspect in Synastry. Reason being is like Neptune can be this thing that's kind of like vague and foggy, and it's hard to kind of hold on to or kind of get clarity with. And so Neptune has a tendency to kind of sometimes cast illusions, or there could be confusion, or there could be some sense of not seeing things very clearly. And just being a Leo rising in your own right, you know, you're going through Pluto on your descendant. You're also going through Pluto hitting your Saturn. So he could very much be your Pluto lessons, where you're learning a lot about, well, you know, am I with people who are self-aware? Are they evasive? You know, is there a sense of like commitment? And I'm just curious, you know, is the Saturn-Neptune stuff about bringing reality to, you know, making this kind of romantic connection real and helping you solidify it, right? Or does it mean that you feel like you're the person who's Saturn, who's kind of pushing it along and trying to commit, but you feel like sometimes he's in or he's out? Now, it could be one of two things. We've got his Pluto on your Lilith. That's hot. I feel like there's a lot of sexual chemistry and kind of attraction there. You've also got his Mars conjunct your Pluto. So that can, in some ways, bring up power struggles, but the sextile to his Sun and also your North Node, I think, is fine. So there could be, with the moon in the 4th house, this feeling of, oh, this person feels like family, or they feel like home. Or I always tell people, when moon's in the 4th house in synastry, it's almost like that person just is very comfortable being in your space, and like could very easily kind of turn into like a domestic relationship or family related energies and that kind of stuff. Here we go. We broke up suddenly in January, and he's back trying to be my friend. So that's the element of Aquarius, trying to be friendly. But Saturn is like, are we friends? And Neptune is in and it's out, right? It's kind of evasive. We're getting along very well, so I'm cautious. All right. You guys have different nodes. And so I think that's the other thing that, you know, because of the age difference that you guys have, his south node is in Cancer, your south node is in Cancer, his north node is in Cancer. And then you also see the same stuff with the Capricorn things. And so when you have people that are like 9-10 years apart, sometimes there's issues there because the direction of where you're going with your north node versus where you've been is kind of flip-flopped, and it's the opposite of the other person. Now, sometimes there's familiarity there, so you can feel like, okay, we balance that energy out. But I have heard a lot of people say it's kind of agitating and annoying. And then he's got his Jupiter on your moon, which honestly, that feels good. It feels like it could be good company, good food, you know, good relationship, good home and kind of domestic kind of stuff. I really like the Jupiter moon aspect in synastry. I have that with my husband. I think it's great. But you have Saturn there as well, his Saturn. So Jupiter expands, hey, can we be friends? But Saturn is like, can we be friends? You know, Taurus, because like we've had this physical connection. His Venus is in your 8th house, and it's in Pisces, and being a Pisces sun, you know, you are very much what he's attracted to. And it tells me that there's just a lot of transformation in this relationship, and it can be positive where you're learning to supersede some of the heavier energies of your chart, and you're trying to learn to kind of trust and connect with each other again. But it can also mean this is a relationship that can really kind of like rock you. Now, I look for aspects between your Mars and your Venuses. So your Mars squares his Venus, so that could create good chemistry and a little bit of friction in a positive way. His Venus also slightly sextiles your Venus, and it looks like his Mars is in Scorpio, and his Mars by sign is opposing your moon and also your Venus. So your Venuses see each other, but your Mars do not see each other. And I feel like with Mars in Gemini and Mars in Scorpio, that aspect means that, you know, you guys have two different ways of like pursuing physical relationships. And so sometimes there's a sense of kind of feeling like there is something that needs to be worked on in terms of your directness with what you're looking for in a relationship, or like that physical connection. And his Mars also, oh no, that's your Pluto. So his Mars is slightly trining his moon, but it does not see his Mars. So do you feel like you guys like talk around stuff rather than just being direct and to the point? Even though you feel like you're best friends and it's powerful, like do you feel like you avoid sometimes some of like the harder kind of conversations? Because his Mars in Scorpio wants to go deep. And you can do that too. You have Pluto there. But your Mars in Gemini is like, okay, let's keep things kind of light. Like, you know, we can be friendly. His sun is your Juno, so that's good for partnerships and relationships. Let's flip this around. And then he's a Pisces rising. So your sun sits in his first house, which is nice. You guys are very much kind of on the same wavelength in terms of where your trajectory is going. You kind of light up his direction. Your Mars sits in his 4th house. So that means that it may prompt potential changes in home or living situation. South node's in the 5th, so it's less about romantic love. It's more about platonic in the 11th and being friends and seeing if a relationship can grow. And it looks like your Jupiter is in his 5th, so that's good for romance. Your moon is conjunct his Saturn, but it's in Taurus. So he might feel like there's a real positive groundedness and connection in how you guys communicate. Like he feels like you're somebody he can talk to, that you're solid, like he can rely on you. I think that it's a combination of the fact that, you know, you have his Neptune on your descendant, so you can't, he has his Neptune on your descendant, so you can't see clearly. And it's probably frustrating because you want commitment, but you're afraid he might get kind of squirrely. And also just the fact that Pluto is going through there. And like the month of August, July and in August, you're going to see Pluto in your 7th and Jupiter in your 1st, which means you're longing for relationships. You're longing for romance, you know, you want some kind of positive romantic change, but it's more about funneling that energy into yourself and not making it be about other people. And like almost, I would say, like to all my Leo risings, play hard to get. Don't allow somebody to easily kind of win you over. Like, know your worth. Don't be willing to sacrifice your personal joy for another person if they're not ready to commit to you. And like, don't let other people kind of dim your light, I guess, basically. You're also going to have like a Venus retrograde that's going to go through, you know, your 5th house. And I think that's going to be a lot of going back and forth with him in the fall. And there's about to be a full moon that's going to be in your 7th house, literally conjunct your Saturn. So I would say give this till about the end of July, around the 29th when you have that full moon. You're going to gain clarity with the opposition to Jupiter on your sun. And it might mean that you're like, no, he's not ready. While that full moon is going to be playing out for him in his 11th house, which could represent a closing out of a potential friendship, because it's not going to be very clear, or there isn't any defined, oh, we're doing this or we're doing that. He tries, and yes, I kind of feel flirty with him, and it's hard conversations, which is unusual for me. I've been holding pretty strong despite that, thanks to my experience. So there you go. You know that you're supposed to be waiting a little bit longer, that you're supposed to let this play out. I'm going to tell you, like, dude, you know, he's a Pisces rising. He's got eclipses the beginning of next year coming in the 7th, which I feel like is going to provide a little bit more clarity because there's going to be an eclipse with a Mercury retrograde. If I were you and you do end up getting back together in some capacity, I would be very careful with getting pregnant this year because Jupiter and the eclipses are on your ascendant. So there is going to be a pretty significant possibility of there either being a renewal or there being a birth. And in his chart, he's going to have Mars retrograde in the 7th, and he's also going through Mercury retrograde in the 5th. He literally went back to somebody who he was dating. But he has more aspects in his chart come the turn of the new year where somebody may leave him if they're not all in. But is your chart compatible? Yeah. You know, there isn't a lot of planets that I see, you know, at least in like the 12th or in the 8th house too much. Venus maybe. But his chart reads to me like with yours that you're like, this guy is like a work in progress. Like obviously there's some common connection. You guys have a lot that makes you guys very compatible, at least intellectually. But I feel like there are some things from him where you have to be very careful. He's going to be the Pluto transit for you. It's going to be Pluto hitting your descendant again. Then it's going to hit Neptune. And it's going to be dancing on your Saturn. And you're going to basically be like, if you can't work out your stuff, or if you don't really know if you're ready, or if you don't have clarity, I got to let you go, right? And so this is where things get interesting, because you can look at the composite chart, and that's going to tell you what's actually going to happen. Taurus rising, your sun's in Aquarius, your moon's in Leo, so this is ruled by Venus, and you have Venus in Aries. So my interpretation is, okay, February you had an eclipse on your sun in your composite chart. So it was kind of like, well, things need to change. You know, both of us need to kind of grow and evolve. So you broke up or you took some space sometime between February and now. You had Saturn hit your Venus. Venus rules your chart, and it's also about whether or not you guys can be friends, 8th house, or if you guys are going to be lovers. Your Venus is at an 8. And if there's other people who maybe are factoring into this, 11th house. You're watching Pluto trine with Saturn, so that can be reestablishing a friendship, but also with boundaries and like it not being intimate unless it's going to be romantic. And you've got Saturn and Neptune that have been squaring your Jupiter. So we need to see something positive happening with your 7th house or with Mars. And I would look to October and November when the Venus retrograde happens here. I would also look to when Saturn's back on your Venus, because it's definitely going to test whether or not you guys are friends or if you're something more. And that's going to be happening October, November, and then into January. And then by next year, you will see that the North Node is going to be on your sun, and you're going to have a Mars retrograde over your Mars. Y'all are going to still be going back and forth February, March, and April of next year. That's my thought on this. It's going to take some more time, and I would go and learn about Neptune transiting your 7th house cusp or your descendant. Saturn means you have to be really clear about what emotional boundaries you have with other people, because it looks like he still doesn't know. And to let you in a little secret, in his chart, because he's got Neptune and Mercury in the 11th house, it means that you would still entertain the idea of talking to other people if you guys aren't defined yet. If you want to be friends, be friends. But his Pluto transit for like the next several years, hitting his Neptune and hitting his Mercury, means even he doesn't know who's friends and who's something else. And when Pluto starts coming into conjunction with Mercury the next 2 years, a friendship could end if he's not acting mature, or somebody who he's dating is going to get sick of waiting for him and they're going to find another person. And I see that also in the eclipse in February, in the Venus, excuse me, the Mars retrograde. That's going to happen. Like, keep him at a safe distance, boo. Keep him at a safe distance. A relationship will really stem from having a really good friendship. But I feel like if you want to preserve the friendship, don't allow things to happen that's him not being a good friend, or him trying to weasel his way in and having that intimate connection, but like not wanting to commit. You can avoid some of this stuff by really holding on to that Jupiter transit and being like, I deserve love. I'm ready for all these things. I could meet people. And if things collide as you get into the fall and then the beginning of next year where you can come back together, great. But somebody's going to be on his case about being like, you need to grow up. You need to grow up for the next several years. So to save you some of that stuff, stay friends with him. You know, maybe if you guys continue to stay friends and if you can respect those boundaries, and maybe you'll meet somebody else or he meets other people, you may still end up coming back together at the beginning of next year. But yeah, you're compatible, but I think you're a lot better of a better match for him than he is for you, because he's work. His planets fall into, you know, your 8th and also your 6th house. But it's not terrible, especially because your Venuses see each other. But working on the directness and having the difficult conversations, like being a Scorpio Mars myself and like having dealt with Gemini Mars, one of the things that drives me nuts is like you're trying to have a serious conversation, or you're trying to get down to the details, or you're trying to talk about things that really bother you, or things that are scary, or, you know, intimate relationship themes. And like the Gemini Mars is always just kind of like, they're like a monkey. They're just constantly jumping around and like laughing and making jokes, but you can't get that connection. So it's hard to see progress if one person is wanting change and the other person just wants to kind of keep things light, right? By the way, you're the Gemini Mars. So sometimes he needs somebody to kind of level with him, and he can get really honest and really direct and like, you know, really connected. But if somebody else is keeping it light, you're never really going to get kind of the answers out of him that you're seeking. I have a lot of options. He's celibate so far. We've been good with boundaries. Okay. Yeah, I can see the compatibility. I really like the Mars moon stuff. I think that also is, and the Mars Jupiter stuff, that also is like just really, really, really good chemistry. But I think that he's still got some growing up to do. And you've probably seen, I don't know how long you guys have been going back and forth, but just retrogrades, eclipses, all kinds of things in Virgo, it's still going to continue until the spring of next year, right? You're way better at it now. Good. You're not that old at all. You're not old, but I think it's funny that you've got, Sag intercepted in your 5th, and it's ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's on your ascendant. Like, you're always going to look younger, and you're always going to attract like younger dudes, right? And I think with Jupiter on your ascendant, you can attract younger dudes, but with Saturn on your descendant, you're either going to wait around until people mature, or you're eventually going to start to say, maybe I am opening up to dating older dudes. You know, you could go either way. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let me know what happens. I'm especially interested to see what happens around that retrograde. All right, let's see. Who do we have on my list here? There we go. All right, looks like we've got Silk and then Jennifer. What's up, Silk? I think you have a birthday coming up too, right? You're welcome. Silk says, hey Candace, my birthday is on the new moon. I wanted to do a year ahead reading. I love to focus on love, but open to what other areas seem to be significant for the year ahead. My birthday is July 14th, 95 in Los Angeles. Where do you live right now, Silk? So Cap rising, new moon in the 7th, change and transformation through relationships. Wow, you've got the North Node getting ready to hit your moon? What? And let's see, how old are you going to be? So you're going to be turning 31? You're still in the same area. Okay. So first things first is, obviously being a Cancer, there's a huge emphasis on the moon, right? So you always look at Saturn, but you also look at the moon. But in this next year, when your birthday begins from July of 26 to 27, you're in an annual perfection year 8. So this means now it's a year of transformation, change, regeneration, intimacy, other people's money, and it's feeding off of the sun, which is in your 7th. So it's saying the transformation will be within relationships. And if you have your sun at 22, it means long-standing, emotional blocks or issues or challenges with relationships are what are being renewed. So prior to you, even getting into your new moon birthday, you're going to have the Kazemi, which is going to happen on Sunday. So that's going to be here. So watch for Sunday for intuitive hits about what's about to change relationship-wise, or set intentions about wanting to clear out the old and bring in the new, especially in relationship habits. Then you have the new moon. So I don't know if you heard me talking to somebody else about this earlier, but everything leading up to your birthday, the last week or two, has been about a flushing out, a clearing out, and you're really going to feel that. That's the one thing I don't like about new moons is like the 3-4 days leading up to it, you feel like, man, everything's getting reset or everything's kind of wiping out in some way, shape, or form. And then the new moon comes in and you're going to be focusing on your 8th house year. So Jupiter goes into your 8th house, so it's already expanding and transforming relationships. The moon goes into your 8th house, so it's saying the same thing. And Mercury is still retrograde. So likely what you'll find is that you don't really have a lot of clarity about what's next until Mercury hits your sun around August the 3rd. And you're going to want to watch the solar eclipses this year. So the solar eclipse in August in your 8th house. You're going to want to watch the solar eclipse that you're going to have in Aquarius next February. So let's look at the eclipses really quick. So this one in your 8th house, which is definitely bringing up change, positive change, financial change, changes in intimacy. And I like that it's trining Saturn, so it's good. Then you're going to have the next solar eclipse here in Aquarius, very close to your moon, which, by the way, the North Node is hitting now. So over the next several weeks, the North Node is going to start coming into conjunction with your moon, which is saying there's going to be some destined changes in relationships, which is pretty much the strongest July, August into September. And then you're going to want to watch the next solar eclipse, although it is going to be after your birthday, but these eclipses are going to start in Capricorn, right? So it is saying by your birthday next year, yeah, you're going to see some pretty big changes in relationships taking place. And by the way, you're going to have another Mercury retrograde there around your birthday next year. So it's a process. So with that being said, other than the solar eclipses, the new moons are something else that I would watch for. And if you look at the natal aspects with your sun's in the 7th, it's opposing Neptune and Uranus in your 1st. So because these planets are retrograde, there is a need to reconnect to the self, reassess what you want, reevaluate where you're living, reevaluate also, what your goals are in relationships and better understand yourself so you can kind of better connect to other people. Because I feel like a lot of times if you have, and I've seen this with Capricorn rising friends of mine who have, Saturn or Neptune or Uranus in their 5th opposing their 7th, they're like, man, I can't find stable partners. Everybody's, nobody wants to settle down. Nobody wants to kind of commit. And I would look at this and I would be like, maybe, because there is some delays in relationships with the sun in the 7th. But the opposition to Neptune and Uranus retrograde is like you yourself are craving freedom or independence or distance in relationships, and you may not be aware of it because it's retrograde. And Saturn is the dispositor. So Saturn both trines your sun and also rules, some of these planets that are retrograde. So really it's bringing up communication in relationships. And Saturn squaring your Venus this year, so that's part of it, that there is like a sense of feeling like I'm not totally satisfied, it's taking too long, for relationships to happen. And next year Saturn's going to square the sun. So a lot of this is figuring out, where is your home base going to be? What's going on with your living situation? How do you feel? Are you starting to get more serious about, wanting to settle down with somebody? I mean, that might be happening as Saturn's getting ready to go into your 4th house next year. And then for the solar return, it's going to give you a Cancer rising. So interesting how your sun is yourself and the new moon's in the 7th house and it's reiterating new relationships but renewal of self. And then the new moon sits on the ascendant. What? So the moon's the ruler. It's sitting in the 12th, conjunct the sun and Mercury. So this is a year of cycles coming to some kind of conclusion, or changes maybe with your home, your living situation, your family. Usually when the sun's in the 12th house, you have to feel like you have to put other people before yourself, or you're making some kind of a sacrifice. So financial sacrifices, it might mean that you're being more conservative, you're kind of planning for a rainy day, or maybe you're saving money because you want to buy a house, you want to move. And Jupiter sits on the ascendant. So that's positive because it's going to bring you better health, more work, more optimism. It's trining Saturn in your 10th house of career, so that's good. Very active, busy social life here with Mars and Uranus in your 11th. And Saturn rules your 7th. So Saturn on the midheaven means you're pretty damn determined to change something about your either career, your relationship status, which honestly, I see a lot more of that taking place from about mid-November through about April of next year, with a special emphasis on the full moon, actually, that's going to be at the end of this month, where you're going to have a full moon on your Juno. So you're calling in a committed partner, right? And Juno and Pluto are there as well, so you're reevaluating what it means to commit, while Jupiter on the ascendant is like, do I want commitment or do I want freedom, you know? My last relationship was in 2022 as well, and it feels like a dry spell. Yeah, I mean, Saturn squaring your Venus is going to make you feel that too. Probably the one other thing I would say that I would keep an eye on is like you have South Node Venus in the 2nd. So you got to be a little bit more cautious with spending money. You got to be more cautious with resources, more conservative with budgeting. Venus rules your home, so you might feel like you're saving money literally to have some home changes in some capacity throughout the year. But I think overall, is there going to be some relationship changes? Yeah, I think so. There's still a sense of like reflecting on what you're letting go of, maybe old relationships, old patterns in relationships, and approaching this year in an optimistic kind of bold way, especially with your career. But be mindful, Jupiter in opposition to Pluto tells me that you're still keeping an eye on what is and is not healthy in relationships, or you're trying to kind of juggle maybe some new habits or routine or even work, and that can create a little bit of like a buffer. And there can be some power struggles where at least Jupiter in the 1st house makes you very strong, very attractive, but Pluto retrograde might mean that people from the past are coming back, or you're reevaluating, you know, if you want to keep going through the same lessons or the same cycles in relationships. And with that trine to Uranus and Mars in your 11th, and also Uranus square Venus, I kind of feel inclined to tell you, like, build friendships with people first. Establish community and make sure that your friends get to meet the people that you're dating, and vice versa, to make sure that it's a match, because you'll be more inclined this year to keep things private, not talk about things if they're not working, maybe make, you know, personal concessions or sacrifices for other people. And I believe there's going to be some eclipses, not just the solar eclipse, but there's going to be a lunar eclipse right along your descendant next summer. And that's going to square Saturn in your 10th. So you're basically giving somebody till next summer, and you're like, are we doing this or not? You know, and the square to Saturn is like, we're going to make this, you know, hard launch, or like this commitment to each other. And thankfully, right after that, Jupiter's coming into conjunction with your Venus. And by then, you know, you're moving out of one annual perfection, and you're going to be moving into a new one. So you're going to be shifting out of, shifting out of your 8th house here, and you're going into your 9th. So then it's going to start highlighting Mercury, and Mercury's in the 7th. So it's going to be like, well, am I meeting somebody through traveling, or are we talking about settling down, or like getting married? So that's interesting. But I think you're giving somebody until about next summer to figure out whether or not you guys are on the same page. And I think that it's funny that the new moon's in your 7th, but it returns to right along your ascendant. So you're changing the way you show up in relationships, rather than maybe giving the power away, right? The sun being in the 7th house, recognizing what you need in relationships. And if that means you need an unconventional relationship, or an open relationship, or distance, or, you know, you need to have some kind of freedom, you're coming to terms with that, so that way you're kind of better tapping into who would be a good fit for you, I think, in the long term. So hopefully that gives you the long and short of it. But I've seen so many Capricorn risings in this last year who have moon in Pisces, and when the North Node came in conjunction with their moon, I was like, you're going to meet somebody, and they all did. And in your case, moon in the 2nd house means you meet somebody at your home, right? And it's at 28. So they have to literally come to your home. So you have to have your own space. And moon in Aquarius means you need independence. And Saturn is saying the same thing. So to me, it looks like the path forward of having a healthy relationship is having your own home base or having some sense of independence or that being defined. So that way you feel like if a relationship comes in, it's not like you need to rely on somebody or that, you know, you need their support. You've already kind of established your own, and then you're going to start figuring out how to kind of partner with somebody else as a result of that. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Silk. I hope you have a happy birthday. So many of you guys are having your birthday here. Cool. So watch, because somebody's going to come to your house. They're going to be like, can I come over? Or can I come visit you? Or can I come stay? They will try to invite themselves over to you, and they may come bringing you gifts, right? Aquarius in the second house. So watch for that, because that's going to be the trigger. Like I have my 7th house ruler in my second house too. And I knew, I was like, oh, I'm going to meet the person I'm going to marry when like they just like show up at my front door. And that's like literally what happened with my husband. He came to my house. All right, we've got Jennifer and Jax and then Stephanie. All right, I got to add your guys' charts really quick because you guys were kind of the last ones to come in. So just give me a second here. I'm going to plug these in. Actually, I do have Jennifer's chart. I take that back. Hey, Jennifer, I know this is the first time you're getting a reading. How can I ensure my husband? Okay, so Jax, if you want a synastry reading, I'm just letting you know it's $75 for the synastry, or if you just want me to answer questions about your chart, I can, but I didn't see that come in until just now. So let me know if you want me to make it just be about your chart or both of your guys's together. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't catch it sooner. Okay, I think we've got about everybody. Let me see if I can pull this chart up. So it'll be Jennifer, Jax, and then Stephanie. And I know we've got Jennifer here. Where did she go? There we go. All right, now we've got everybody. Okay, so this is going to be for Jennifer S. June. Hold on a second. Is that right? That should be June the 4th. Let me change that. There we go. Okay. So Jennifer is June the 4th, 1975 at 10:34 a.m. in Jamaica, New York. She says, would love to know about love, work. Just won an award for rank number 5th in the country. I'm closing on a home in July. Excited. Was in my last home for 20 years. Change is good. Upgrades. Okay. Hi, Candace. First time here. Please pick work, love, or major theme. Move whatever you think is more pertinent. Well, the sun is going to rule your entire chart because you have a Leo rising. Like relationships are still important, okay? And so this is where it's kind of like a little bit of everything. Obviously, you've got a ton of planets. So that's the first thing that my eyes kind of go to is the fact that Saturn, which is one of the rulers of your 7th house, which could be clients, people who you're selling to, people who you're doing business with, your marketplace, as well as relationships, is moving through the 9th. So that means that your faith, your belief system about relationships, and the way that you're kind of approaching relationships is changing. Maybe you have to travel and there's some new territories or ways that you connect with people. Maybe travel opens the door to potentially meeting people. And then Uranus is also the co-ruler of your 7th house. And you're going to see a lot of planets that have been kind of clustered around Uranus, but it's been predominantly picking up the energy of your career. So over the next several years, as Uranus is getting very close to your sun, hitting those career goals, those milestones, all of those things are going to start happening. And I would basically say, you know, a lot of my Leo risings are going to benefit from really looking at their professional goals, their friends, and their networks. The more that you're networking, the more that it's going to improve your career. The more that you're diversifying your friend groups, the more likely you are to meet somebody. And there's going to be like a whole new cast of characters kind of coming into your life. I think a lot of Leo risings are going to find that it's a little bit more challenging for relationships in like the next month or so because Jupiter is going to be expanding their need for freedom. They'll want romance, but it's going to oppose Pluto. For you, this tracks more like a Virgo rising because you're a later degree Leo. So you're going to be craving with Jupiter and all these planets in the 12th house, rest, relaxation, getting your home in order, you know, setting up your private places, all of that stuff. And I also feel like you're going to start to notice that with the North and the South node right now squaring, you know, your natal nodes, that everything is changing. So when you say, oh, you bought a home, you know, work is leveling up, you're feeling good. Yes, that's because the nodes are squaring, so it's bringing the areas of focus in your chart to completely different areas than where you typically focus, which is home and career. Now, in the background, I think about how the South node is going to continue to move through your 5th house, but now it's going to pick up the energy of Leo for the next like year and a half. And this tells me that you're learning to let go of an old identity, or maybe you're learning to let go of some old wardrobe or some different, you know, kind of like style related things. Like there's almost like a new and improved you that's about to come through, and that'll be connected to the eclipse around the 12th of August. And then the North node is going to shift into Aquarius. So for the first time in 19 years, you're going through the North node in the 7th house where, yes, there can be new relationships, people can come in. The only thing I would say is it's saying start with platonic relationships. Start with getting to know them as friends. Start with connecting with community. And sometimes the North node could represent somebody who's destined. Like I've seen a lot of people go through the North node transits in their 7th house, and it materializes as like meeting somebody who ends up being their future spouse, right? Or it ends up being, you know, a really prominent client or like a, you know, a business partner. But it can also represent people that we are not really sure of what their purpose is yet. And so part of me looks at this and I'm like, well, you know, you're going to have, you know, definitely a lot of romantic opportunities. I think with Jupiter in opposition to Pluto, there's this feeling of like, I'm not just going to attach myself to any one particular person. I value my free time. I value my independence. If it's somebody who's really going to be opening to connecting in an authentic way that's still going to allow me to do me and we can build together and it can be a little bit more free, then yeah, you could do that. Those relationships are going to be, you know, a little bit more emphasized next year. So you'll see one eclipse that's going to be pulled up at the end of August that's technically in your 7th, but I don't think it's going to be about a committed relationship. I think it's still about enjoying your kind of free time on your own. And the bigger relationship themes are going to start happening here around the solar eclipse in February of 2027, where you have a new moon solar eclipse right on your descendant. So it's basically saying, now I am ready for relationship and connecting with people. Mars will be retrograde, so you have felt like all the home-related things you wanted to do, all the improvements, all the setting up of your space will be good. And then the eclipse happens in your 7th, and you'll see a Mercury retrograde in February, and that's going to be a very prominent time in relationships for you. Very. I would also say, like, work stuff is fine. You know, you've had Jupiter hit Venus, so you're finally getting recognition for all the work you've been doing behind the scenes. You're also going to see that there's going to be, like, a Mercury and a Venus retrograde in your 4th house. So If you have just recently moved, I would say if you have plans to make changes, alterations, renovate, anything like that, really be careful with the timing, because beginning of October through about mid-November, a lot of Leo risings are going to realize, oh my God, I moved into this house and it's having plumbing issues, or there's toilets backing up, there's issues with garbage disposals, or they're planning kitchen remodels, or there can be a sense of figuring out there's something wrong with like flooring. So I don't recommend trying to do that work. I don't recommend trying to redecorate or revamp. I would say try to make do with very little until this retrograde is over. And as you're getting into mid-November, things will kind of settle in that department. And Mars and Jupiter are going to come into conjunction. So you're really adamant, I would say November, December to be like, I'm transforming my home. So there's going to be something that you're going to be doing there that to me looks like it's going to be wanting to complete it, but it may not be complete until closer to the end of the year, which makes sense. You get past the holidays and you get into the new year, and then you're going to be more open, for like dating and things like that. And then I would also say Uranus coming into conjunction with your sun, that's going to be more next year. It's going to start, it won't be exact until 2028, but that's going to be another kind of turning point and breakout year for your career. And in regards to the eclipses and the retrogrades, the eclipse that's going to be on the 20th of August, I've been looking at this eclipse. I'm working on my eclipse webinar, and I have been talking about how the eclipse is at a 20, so it's going to be about change. It's going to involve the south node, so we're going to want to cut, remove, or get rid of things. You might notice there's like a different hairstyle or some kind of vibe in terms of your appearance coming in. And then that is the same degree which Mars will retrograde through. So you probably shouldn't be making any big appearance changes around the 12th. If you're starting to work out more, changing your style, changing your clothes, changing something with your beauty routine, your hair, you're really going to start to see the effects of that coming through as you're getting into November when Mars and the south node meet. And I would just say be careful how deep you're getting into with some of the house changes. There are some things that you think that you're going to be able to do that I would be like, you need some help with that, so I'm not sure what it is. If it's simple things like painting or changing furniture, that's fine. But do not be messing with anything that's electrical, anything that's going to involve fire or heat, because you're more accident prone with some of these aspects on your ascendant when it comes to trying to fix things in your house by yourself. I'm closing on my home on July 29th. I already bought 90% of my furniture. I bought it early to avoid these retrogrades. Okay. So the thing that I will tell you is you're closing the house. Obviously, you're going to be moving in August. The eclipse could be very much a part of that new beginning. But I'm wondering if you're going to get in there and the Venus retrograde is going to be going, I bought all of this stuff. I thought it was going to look good. I hope you measured things, because the Mercury retrograde could be about measurements and how things are actually going to look and feel once you get it in there. And it's fine. If you need to make some changes or stuff, whatever, use the retrograde if you need to return something, or if you need to exchange something, or if you need to go and find something else to fill in the pieces. I like a Venus retrograde in the 4th house to like go to estate sales. Scorpio is usually like high quality stuff, but things that might come from people that are going to pass it down. So if you're needing some other kind of key pieces, use those retrogrades to go and find some things that, could be perfect if you need that, or make some changes, to some of the stuff that you're getting. But honestly, I feel like it's like solar eclipse, new moon, new you. And then you're preparing your home, because your home is going to be symbolic. It's 10 signs away from your relationships to go deeper into relationships next year. And next year I see a lot of traveling with Saturn going into your 9th house further and hitting these moons. And possibly there being some kind of exciting relationship that's going to go hand in hand with traveling, or meeting somebody while you're traveling, or something that's going to be connected to like continuing education or some kind of training, right? Okay, perfect. Good. I love all of that. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Where is your Venus? Why am I not seeing it? Oh, your Venus is in Cancer in the, okay, it's in the 12th house. So some things are worth being like out of sight, out of mind. I'm going to have somebody else who's going to take care of it for me. Love it. And the fact that the south node started coming into a square with your north node, and the north node went into your 7th house and you got an interior designer, perfect, right? So it's just like, okay, I know I could do it, but I'm going to let somebody else do it. And sometimes Scorpio is the vibes too. So I would say you might find that when you're getting into the fall, you're like, okay, do I want to feng shui the house, or, am I doing a home blessing? Something like that's going to go down, either home or family wise. And when it does happen, you're going to do something to kind of change the overall vibes, because it's going to be turning retrograde right on your IC, right? So you're expanding 9, something about the energy in the home. So I don't know, maybe it's going to be connected to feng shui, numerology, something like that is going to happen. And I would watch for that. Let's see, where is the Cazimi going to be? Okay, so it turns retrograde here, and then it's going to go this way. Maybe you're going to be inviting family to come and stay in your home and celebrate the holidays. Maybe you're going to have a sister, or you're going to be getting to know your neighbors and have them over. Venus retrograde in the fourth can be some of those things too. So reconnections of people you haven't seen or getting to know your local communities. But just watch out, because that's when you're going to be making all of those tweaks. Okay? Congratulations on all this stuff. That's amazing. Getting a house, moving. These are all really good things. And the fact that you already have the whole place picked out, perfect. Avoiding those retrogrades like a boss. All right, we've got Jax and then Stephanie. All right, so we've got Jax here. And that was 12/23/82, 4:49 a.m. And then we've got your partner, 3/16/82 at 5 p.m. Thank you. Appreciate you. You're welcome, Jennifer. All right, so Jack says, I may not be here for it. How can I assure my husband of the great progress, although he continues to only see the past and assumes the next step will only be what he is used to? He has a hard time seeing changes in me. Okay. Hey, Junie, go back. We did your reading. It was like the second or the third reading. So if you go back, you'll see that I was calling for you, but I didn't know what your question was. So I just did just a general reading for you on the transits and the new moon. All right, so let's take a look. So basically it sounds like you're trying to kind of get on the right path with your partner, right? So Uranus has been going through your 7th house. So there's definitely been a little bit of tension in how you're relating to other people for the last year or two. Probably as soon as it hit Gemini and it started in conjunct and quincunxing your sun and coming into your Uranus opposition, that's when he became very vocal about some of the issues that have been kind of residing between the two of you guys for some time. Venus rules your 7th, and you've got Venus and Mercury in Capricorn. Saturn is squaring that. So Saturn Neptune hits your moon, having to deal with some, kind of long-standing issues emotionally or things with the family and the home. Squares your sun, ouch. And now you're trying to kind of work through some of these issues. Okay, so until next year, when Saturn squares your Venus, that's going to be the real test when it's coming out of that square in terms of marriage and relationships. Mars and Uranus have been meeting in your 7th, so that's been definitely sending some quakes. And I would say when Saturn comes back into a square with your Venus, this is where you really need to pay attention. February, March of 2027, because this is the last square. And Venus rules your partner, and then boom, it's the setup for next year when Uranus starts to oppose your natal Uranus. You're Uranian, right? You got Uranus on your ascendant. So part of your Uranus opposition is like where you're used to kind of having the freedom or your independence, and like all of your planets are factored into the first quarter of your chart. So this is very much, it's about you in this lifetime. Now you're seeing through the Saturn square, the Uranus opposition, the Jupiter square, that you're having to take into consideration other people, right? February of this year, maybe, because it squared Uranus in your 7th. So yeah, when that eclipse came in here, it was technically in your whole sign 4th of home, and it was squaring Uranus in the 7th. I knew a lot of Scorpio risings that were having issues in relationships, and it was like, okay, who's moving out? What's going on? Are we separating? What are we doing? And it's been 6 months of this because that was an eclipse. So you're about to see the full moon that's going to be taking place at the end of the month, and that's also going to be showing you, what's next. But as long as Venus isn't getting hit too hard, you're fine. Venus retrograde, that's going to be later this year. Here, so October and November, when Venus retrogrades in your 12th house over your Saturn and your Pluto, that could be a much more difficult time for your marriage. So October and November is where you need to watch, and then the true turning point, I think, is actually going to be March of next year. Anyway, you were asking if he's going to see that things are going to be better, that things are going to potentially change, or, that things can evolve between the two of you guys, and you want to know, is he going to see it? So he's a Virgo rising. He's had Saturn and Neptune on his sun for the last year and a half. And that just literally means he feels like he's been kind of lost in a relationship, or he feels alienated, or that somebody is going through a lot emotionally or psychologically, and maybe they've been kind of checked out. And then Jupiter rules his 7th, and he's got natal Jupiter in Scorpio. Okay, so Jupiter and Mercury trine. So like, you know, Jupiter's retrograde, but he can communicate with partners. But his partners come off as, you know, Sun in the 7th, Mercury, you know, connected to the 7th, self-focused, obviously spiritual, sensitive, emotional, but they can kind of isolate. And he's got some difficult relationship astrology. Saturn, Pluto, Mars, all retrograde Libra. Ugh. So there's a lot of back and forth that he's doing this year with Saturn opposing, where he's frustrated because he feels like, you know, why do I need to trust? Saturn in the 8th, you know, how can I trust? And there could be some financial, you know, conflicts and some other things kind of coming up here as well. Pluto's coming up on his Venus too. And as Pluto is starting to come into conjunction with Venus over the next 2 years, it's squaring Jupiter. So, I mean, it's going to get to a point here where if things don't get better, you need to almost be prepared that there may potentially be an ending in this relationship. I would say watch for him isolating himself a little bit under some of these eclipses that are going to start coming up in August. Like if he starts sleeping in separate bedrooms, or if he starts getting like secretive, watch for that. And then the lunar eclipse in Pisces around the 27th of August is the final Pisces eclipse connected to his 7th house, right on his Mercury. So it's about an emotional heart-to-heart about the goals and the connections with a partner. And if you guys are having problems, the 7th house is a great time to use like a therapist. And that's going to square Uranus, and it's going to square transit Uranus. See, this is where there's going to be some problems that are going to kick up. And the moon in Pisces is where you're emotional. Sun in Mercury is where he's more matter-of-fact, direct, and logical. And it tells me that you guys aren't going to be speaking the same language, and there could be some emotional tension. Like, I would say knowing that this is coming, and if you guys have been having issues and you're trying to communicate with him saying, hey, I'm trying to make things better, and he's not having it, go and talk to a therapist. Get ahead of this before this eclipse happens. So you can use this energy to bury the past in the past. 4 degrees represents, you know, emotional closure. Before this comes in and kind of stirs a bunch of stuff up. Then you're going to see Mars in the South Node conjunct several times, where he may feel like he wants to break away from a partnership. It'll happen several times. I'm not saying he'll act on it, but it'll come up in mid-November. It'll come up again in February. And then it's finally complete as of about April of next year. He listened to the last reading you gave me. Good. I mean, then you know that I've said to both of you guys, like, it takes two, right? To some extent, with his Sun and his Mercury connected to the 7th house, sometimes he does sometimes give too much to other people. Or there can be a sense of him letting other people say what's going to happen or what's going to, you know, take place. But these planets are in Pisces, so there can be some sense of disappointment or not feeling like things are, you know, very clear, especially while Uranus is squaring his Mercury. It means that he's going through a lot of changes with how he asserts himself and what's going on with his career and like his direction in terms of his purpose. And he feels kind of stunted, or he feels frustrated, and like mentally he's very short because of some of these Uranus oppositions and squares. And then the reality is like, you know, if things are going to get better, it's more going to be connected to your composite chart. It's not really going to be the synastry. So together you guys are a Libra rising, ruled by Venus. Venus is in Capricorn. And you guys have Saturn square Venus. And you're going through the North Node coming into conjunction with your Sun and your Mercury, while Pluto's coming up on your Moon. Next year, when Saturn comes into your 7th, opposes Saturn and squares Venus, that is it. You guys have until about March of next year, maybe April. Because by the time Pluto's hitting your Moon, you're going to feel like you don't want to live in the same house if you guys aren't getting better. And the North Node going through your 5th house, like that's supposed to enhance, hey, you know, what's going on with us on the home front? What's going on with us as a couple, or, you know, as parents, if you guys have kids, or where are you guys moving to? Like these eclipses are going to start showing you where if both parties aren't doing the work, then it's going to create a lot of disharmony in the home, right? Especially because you're going to start seeing Saturn square Venus, and then you're going to see eclipses.
And that doesn't mean it's going to happen in one transit like March and April. You'll just start to see, then you guys start discussing whether or not, somebody is contemplating moving. Before you get to that point too, the Venus retrograde is going to be significant because it's going to retrograde right over your guys' Pluto. So you could use the Venus retrograde in October and November to recommit to each other, right? Renew your vows. That's one thing I would consider doing because Venus is going to say, okay, it's time to reconnect and maybe, start with a fresh slate. And that's going to be picking up the energy of the trines from Venus to the North Node in the 4th, where you guys are really giving each other a fresh start. And then that eclipse that's going to come in next February is going to be right on your guys' sun. Are you guys talking about moving? Or have you guys discussed, I don't remember if you have kids or not, but that's picking up the energy of your 5th. And if you don't, then it's going to be, how are we creating our own unique family? Or what's going on with the family dynamic? Or how can we spend more time together? And it's picking up the energy of the 5th house, which means you guys need hobbies together. You guys need romance. You guys need to have fun. Okay. So incorporating your kids into this, doing more with your children. And just naturally having Venus in the 4th, it's good for a Libra rising chart because you can have a home, you can have a family together. I mean, obviously all these planets in the 4th house, you were bound to do this. It's the Saturn-Pluto that squares Venus. That means both parties have something they need to be working on. And the 2nd house can be speech. And I notice with Mercury conjunct Uranus, there's a lot of harsh speech in the relationship. And with Uranus opposing that, I feel like it's psychologically triggering each other where it's you guys won't even be arguing and then you go to have a conversation and chat and then somebody blows up and then there's this tension and then you guys are both fighting. Your composite. Yeah, this is your composite chart. So what I would do while Venus is retrograde in October and November is I would renew my vows. Even if that's not when you guys got married, that's what I would do. Yeah. And then next year, you're going to start seeing the North Node coming into conjunction with Venus. It's just more focusing on the family unit, the environment, the home, what you guys are kind of building together, and go and learn about, Saturn transiting your 7th house. Or you could even listen to Libra rising horoscopes, and that's going to be reflecting what's going on with both of you guys. Oh, perfect. So you're literally, okay, you guys got married during a Venus retrograde. I'm pretty sure, because the last one in Scorpio was in 2018. What is that? 10/21/18? Yes, you did. Which means you need to go back and you need to do it again. Yeah. And Pluto is squaring your Venus. And your sun, the sun was conjunct your Saturn and your Pluto. So the fact that you guys got married was a testament in itself. That was we both know what we're signing up for. You knew that it was not necessarily an easy dynamic when you went into it. But I see a lot of people have, Sun, Venus, Moon in the 4th house who are married, they have kids, they have a family, And the positive is that you got the North Node coming in there and eclipses coming in there. But you guys got married with Venus retrograde, so I need you guys to do it again. You need to literally write new vows, recommit to each other. You don't have to have a huge thing. You could do it privately, but I'd like to see you guys do that because that might remedy some of the situation. And then your guys' composite Mercury also is going to receive a retrograde. Wow. So Pluto squaring the Venus where you guys got married. You've got Pluto that's been on the South Node. I mean, there's been lots of stuff that's been going down. So, I mean, honestly, I'm not going to say it's going to fix everything, but I would 100% renew my vows with these transits. 100%. I think it would be much, much, much better. And as the North Node is going to be swinging into Aquarius and it's going to start coming into conjunction with your Mars, you guys need to start going on date nights. You need to start doing that stuff, especially February of next year. Let's work on more of the relational aspects and learning not to trigger each other. And if there is a lot of tension going on, let's say the beginning of August, I want to see you guys working with a counselor or a therapist immediately so you can get ahead of the eclipse in August. And then try to get to a place where you guys can be feeling like you can reconnect and bringing that intimacy and that togetherness back. But I feel inclined to tell you, because it's your Uranus opposition, and you're going to see Uranus in your 7th house, starting to oppose your natal Uranus, you don't get to be the person who's anymore. It's all about me. I'm not saying in a selfish way, but a lot of your astrology is. Now you're seeing the way that you react and how it's impacting other people, and other people are going to start looking around being like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think he feels like, from his perspective, sometimes you don't let him in. And so there is a great opportunity for you guys to start getting a little bit more clarity on that as you're kind of getting into the fall, you know. What's up, Meditation Studio? Hopefully that's helpful. Sending you good vibes. Your composite chart looks a lot like mine and my husband's. That's really funny. Libra rising and like all that Aquarius in like the 4th and the 5th house. All right, we've got Stephanie. And Stephanie is June 21st, 1994. Miami, 7:45 p.m. She says, I'm working on pushing past a lot. Can I have a romance prediction, please? I've been celibate for 5 years, going on 6. I can handle being without romance, but romance would be nice. Okay. Well, my goodness. I think it's interesting, you know, that the North Node has been going through your 7th house, but nothing has really tracked. And this is where like I go back and forth between whole sign and like Placidus. But as the North Node's been going through Pisces for like the last almost 2 years, it's represented, I think, with like Saturn and Neptune being there, being like, there is no one, or I don't feel that need to connect, or I need to have better boundaries, or, you know, kind of separation with other people. I don't really think that's going to be the case much longer. Okay, so I have to see at least 3 significant aspects before I make a prediction. So these are my kind of my mindset and what I'm thinking about. One is you're getting ready to see the North Node come into conjunction with Saturn. So that's like a once in a 18 and a half, 19-year cycle where now your area of growth is going to be about unifying and connecting with another person. And it's karmic because your Saturn is at 29. So go back, think about your Saturn return, what happened there, what did you learn about relationships, where did you learn your boundaries, so on and so forth. I'm assuming, just doing the math in my head, your Saturn return was probably the last significant Saturn relationship you were in, right? So now the North Node comes into conjunction with Saturn, and it's saying if you want growth, you have to connect with other people. It's part of your cosmic and kind of karmic evolution. So you're going to see that all summer. Then you're going to start to see Jupiter, which rules anything that's associated with romance, dating, creativity, pop into Leo. Now, it's not on your ascendant yet. You're going to have to see it oppose Pluto. And as an Aquarius sun, you know, Jupiter in Leo is going to be relationship oriented. Eclipses in Leo are going to be relationship oriented. So it means that that's going to bring people in. I'm assuming until Jupiter and Saturn trine, you may not see that window of opportunity open, but I think it is going to start to open as you're getting closer to like end of August, going into September, when Jupiter, planet of love and romance, is in your rising sign and it starts trining Saturn, and you're like, hey, I think I am kind of open-minded. And I would say the key here with Saturn retrograde and a trine to Jupiter is relationships are out there. I know they're great. I'll find that person. But in reality, it's like I have to be kind of detached because I know that they're going to find me when I'm ready, when I'm in that mindset. So there needs to be like a sense of you being like, okay, I'm open, you know, to receiving relationships again. You know, I'm open for business. And there's this reset that's happening with the eclipse on your ascendant in early August. So a lot more people are going to see you. You're going to be a lot more visible. And then 3, Jupiter is going to activate that eclipse, and that's going to be here. Okay, so that's going to be in October. And Jupiter is expansion, visibility. Mars, passion, sexiness, is opposing Saturn. So it's almost like you're still doing the independent thing, maybe as long as the fall, but I have a feeling just with Jupiter being on your ascendant, it's bringing you opportunity for romance. Now, you might go back and forth. The South Node being there is like, I want it, I don't want it. I want it, I don't want it. The best way to bring a relationship in, because you have Saturn in your 7th house natally, and you've got Saturn that's going in and out of your 8th house, is you have to connect to them energetically, like in the ethers. And you almost have to basically be like, okay, I'm ready. Show me a sign. Let me know when you're going to pop in. And they say wherever your 7th house lord is where you find your partner. Well, it's in the 5th house. So you're going to find them going out and doing some kind of entertainment related thing after work. You're going to find them maybe with coworkers. You're going to find them maybe at a bar or something that's going to be kind of like creative. That's all like 5th house. Oh, June. Sorry. Why did I not see that? I think this isn't me. Sorry. I could have sworn that said June. She's like, what are you saying? Hold on. Every Mercury retrograde is bound to get me. The letters are so small. I'm sorry. June 21st, 1994.
7:45 p.m. Miami, right? Okay, completely different reading. So your 7th house is obviously going to be relationships, which is Mercury. And you've got your natal Mercury retrograde in the 7th. So relationships this year are a little tricky because number one, right now, you're going through a Mercury retrograde in your 7th house. So there's a sense of being like, do I want to go back into relationships? Do I not? Am I open to committing to somebody in an intimate way? Am I not? And I think this period of like the last month has been a reflection of what you're letting go before you go into something new. Okay, so it's kind of clearing that space. And then you're going to see the new moon, which is going to be in your 7th house, Placidus, right there. So this is where we set new intentions for relationships. Mercury is about to go direct too. So I feel like this is where you're maybe writing a letter to your future partner, or you're making a list of all of the qualities and the attributes that that person might have, and then holding on to it. Then when you see a significant transit to your Mercury, relationships will evolve. Well, the challenge here is that Neptune is squaring Mercury. You have to be careful for be isolating yourself too much. Okay, Saturn and Neptune at the bottom of your chart means that you're kind of like, well, I'm just kind of going along with things. You know, time's just passing me by. I'm just keeping to myself. And it's totally fine if you recognize and you realize that you can be alone. But I think with Saturn and Neptune squaring from the left-hand side, it's reminding you that, yes, we know you can do it, but you don't have to. And so this is cool because of Mercury retrograde in your 7th house. You're getting a reading. You know, you're talking to an astrologer about being like, what direction am I supposed to go in relationships? And obviously Mercury retrograde, they got your birth time wrong or your birth date wrong. But what's cool is that now that Neptune is no longer squaring your sun, your philosophy and your beliefs about relationships are a little bit more open now. They're a little bit more clear. So that's telling me that you are ready to meet someone. Be careful with Neptune square. You can have some family members that are kind of like critical, or they're kind of naysaying your relationship status, or they're asking you, when are you going to get married, or when are you going to meet somebody, or when are you going to settle down? And like, it could be irritating, and it might make you feel like you want to clam up and you don't want to tell people what's going on. And then when Neptune is no longer squaring your Mercury, relationships are going to be so much more clear, right? Like that's what's going to happen. So when we get to next year, Neptune's going to come back. It's going to hit a 4, then it's going to hit a 5. And then you're going to have the first real breakthrough period where I actually think you could have some real relationship connections and commitment begin to happen. Now, could you meet somebody between now and this time? Yes. But for me, I'm looking at some of the trines with the outer planets that's showing me that a relationship is actually going to start to unfold, which is going to be next summer. And having Uranus and Mars going through Gemini tells me that people can come in. A variation of people can come in, and they might come in pairs, but they may not be consistent. So you have to keep an open mind about what relationships look like. Are you just looking for companionship? Do you not want a physical or an intimate relationship? I think Jupiter hitting your Venus in the 8th house means you might meet somebody that make you go, okay, I could break the celibacy. I could see myself having a connection with somebody. And that would start right around end of July going into August. And relationships can evolve through self-betterment, transformation, therapy, traveling. It's picking up the energy of the 9th. Any self-help related things. So if you're wanting to do stuff on, preparing yourself for relationships, or meditation on love, or even long distance relationships. I mean, man, Pluto's now coming into some trines and some sextiles. So you could be trying to meet people online before you decide that you want to get seriously committed. Oh, if you're estranged from your family, then, that's not necessarily easy, but it's going to be easier for your relationships because it's not going to make you feel like you have to live in any one particular place. All of my Sag risings, I've told them, a lot of you guys are going to be moving still, like in the next year or so. And a lot of you guys, if you're not moving, are going to be open to the idea of meeting people who might live in other places, and there could be some long distance relationship stuff going on. I think with like Mercury retrograde conjunct your sun, and the sun's intercepted through your 8th, there's this sense of you dating people, but then you get to know them, and then you're like, maybe this is not who I thought they were, or like I'm seeing the other side of them, and then realizing that there can be some like power struggle issues in relationships. And Venus being in the 8th house too, when you'll always meet people when you go through some dramatic transformation. So like, you'll meet somebody right after they get out of a breakup or a divorce, or you'll meet somebody
right after they lost their job, or you had a death in the family. Like it'll be some dramatic thing. You just got to keep your eyes out. I think this year with Pluto in opposition to your Venus, like you'll attract people who are in relationships. And so you have to ask questions and be like, well, how long have you been single? And like, what are you looking for? And like, are you seeing other people? You know, and some of my Sag risings with the Pluto Uranus trine, they're more open to casual relationships or open relationships, or they're more open maybe to, you know, opening up the relationship in a physical aspect. I'm not saying you should, but have these conversations with people, because you're going to have, I think, people who are looking for something a little bit more casual, and to kind of protect yourself and not be energetically, you know, saving yourself for somebody who's going to want something committed. Get to know them first and make sure that you guys are on like the same page. But let's see, I want to check something out here. So you're 32, so you're going into your annual perfection, year 9. I guess you just started your annual perfection 9. So the solar eclipses are going to be impacting you. And if you look at this whole sign, your sun's in the 9th house, or it rules the 9th house, but it's in your 8th. So your philosophy about security and intimacy is going to change this year. And the solar eclipses are going to be impacting you. Do I see a relationship coming in through your progress chart? Yeah. The sun's going to hit your, Jupiter's going to hit your progressed sun and Mercury. So that's another one. And then the moon rules your 7th, and Saturn is squaring your moon. And that's why you're like, I can still be alone. You can, but once again, you don't have to. So maybe watch for, you know, having met somebody, but you're still trying to figure out whether or not you guys are on the same page come about October. And then I could see some more prominent relationship stuff start happening as the eclipses are going to start coming into your progress 7th. So that'll be like, once again, next summer. Yeah. Closer to next summer is when that's kind of coming up, where you're going to figure out right around June, July of next year, are we doing this or are we not doing this? Right? Hold on, I want to check one more thing. Yeah. So now you're a Leo sun. And you just had a full moon here not too long ago. So there should have been something that changed. I would say like last summer, where you were like, okay, maybe I've had enough time alone. I'm open to being with somebody now. That's how I see it. So maybe it's been about a year that you've been open to this. But be excited about Jupiter coming into conjunction with some stuff in your progress 7th. I mean, you might end up meeting someone here very, very, very soon. I would say over the next like month or 2. And I don't think it's serious yet. So there could be some enticement, but watch out for any of the drama that's connected with other people, but more kind of settling into something as you're getting into summer of next year, you know? Very cool. Man, Pluto's no longer opposing your progressed sun. Like you're in the clear. It's been 3 years that looked like if you were in relationships, it was going to be honestly a lot of problems. So you have evaded a lot of that, and you're going to notice as a Cancer sun, the Capricorn eclipses next year are good for relationships. So just don't stay in the house too much. I guess that would be one thing. And you're going to meet people, because Mercury is retrograde, once people have gone through some kind of prominent change. So be looking to meet people in ways that they're bettering themselves. Are they going to a gym? Are they joining a club? Are they going out and working on themselves? Going to a meditation, center, anything like that? It's very Mercury in Cancer. Or where there's water or there's pools. So I don't know if you're still in Miami, but somewhere where there's going to be like water related events, that's a really good way for you to connect and kind of meet with them. And they might meet you while they're traveling. So they might be from out of town, but don't let that limit you. I think you're gonna keep an open mind when it comes to distance in relationships now that Uranus is in your 7th house. Okay? Very exciting. I'm excited to see what happens. I love that clearing out that's happening right before your birthday in your 7th house. You're in Virginia. Okay, so your locational stuff changes a little bit, but still you can look at the natal chart to see where things are kind of going on. Love it there. Definitely changes your chart being in a different location. So that might be something that would be interesting to look at down the road. Hopefully that was helpful. I want to hear, even if you come and leave a message by the end of summer, I want to see if you end up connecting with somebody, because it looks like it's very possible. And thank you for getting a reading and for your patience. I appreciate it. And for everybody else who got a reading, and if you guys were patient, thank you. I really appreciate it. It takes a little bit longer to do the, obviously, the lunar readings. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. Make sure you guys subscribe so you can catch more of these videos. I'm always here on Fridays, but we have a new astro weather coming out on Sunday. We're going to be talking all about the Pluto-Uranus trine, and there's a lot of new content that I'm going to be putting together with webinars and other things. So click the links in the description, head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. There you guys can sign up for my newsletter so you can get alerts for some of these webinars I'm going to be working on, like the eclipses, the Venus retrograde, the Mars retrograde, all kinds of stuff I'm starting to put together. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. With that being said, I'll see you guys here very soon, and I hope you have an awesome new moon in Cancer. Take care.